catch up, but it wasn't going to give them market dominance back.
Let's see. Testing. This is so stupid. Let's check this out. Oh my gosh, my restream. Where's my restream? Do 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 do. Here? No. Okay, here we get. Here it is. Oh wait, this shouldn't be on Disco Elysium. What the heck? Edit. Oh, it is on art. Oh. Okay, cool. I'll put it on art. Was my Disco Elysium stream on art? I don't even know. That'd be embarrassing.
Still trailing behind, so they began working on their most ambitious plan yet. The Oga family, who owned Shogakukan, Viz's parent company, also owned the manga publisher Shueisha. But despite being owned by the same family, the two companies were fierce rivals. But in terms of manga, Shueisha was unmatched. Shueisha's flagship title was a little manga magazine called Shonen Jump. You may have heard of Shonen Jump, but I cannot overstate the dominance and importance of Shonen Jump at this time.
That looks good.
The Shonen Jump is the treasury of the comma, Japanese manga.
All right, cool.
In a single weekly installment in the early 2000s, you could read One Piece, Naruto, Hunter x Hunter, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Bleach, and many others. Its circulation had peaked a few years earlier at somewhere between 7 and 9 million copies every single week. That's more than any American publication.
Almost there.
Otherwise, in a country with a third of the population. Shueisha wielded this power aggressively. Stu Levy actually mentioned them earlier. They were the ones who refused to license their manga to anyone who could flip it. Now, Viz had already managed, with some difficulty, to get the rights to Shueisha's Dragon Ball, but the rest of Shueisha's vast library was out of anyone's reach. Well, not anyone. Years earlier, before anyone suspected the size of the American market, Shueisha had come to someone else.
They came to me and they said, hey, would you want to do this Shonen Jump magazine English version? And I had just gotten killed doing magazines for like 3 or 4 or whatever years. And I said, I would love to do the titles. I can't do it as a magazine. And they said, no, we're looking for partners.
Stupid. I didn't even.
And then if you do the magazine, you do the graphic novels. And I was such an idiot. I said no.
So now Viz wanted to partner with Shueisha, but it wasn't going to be easy. Not only would Viz have to publish
oh no, please don't tell me it's crashing already.
Even if they lost money, as part of the deal, Viz would have to sell a major block of ownership of Viz to Shueisha. But Horobuchi agreed. He knew the value of that manga. Even if they lost money on the magazine, they would make it up in graphic novels, and it could be what they needed to turn the tide in their.
I gotta turn off the tilting.
Business,
I don't like how the tilting works.
Deal for me to make it happen.
I think what really changed was Shonen Jump magazine.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Shueisha's coming into Viz. That was a massive shift in the landscape.
All at once, Viz had the licenses to some of Japan's most successful manga, and would rapidly begin producing volumes in the Tokyo Pop trim size at $7.95. And
at this time,
Horobuchi didn't
at this time of hour.
This time, he also got the TV rights.
Where Viz really started to create some separation was Cartoon Network.
By working closely with Cartoon Network, Viz managed to get Shonen Jump properties on US TV. Just as Cartoon Network had aired Sailor Moon and driven Tokyo Pop's manga business, now Naruto and other anime series would be a marketing campaign for Viz's new line of manga. It was an incredible coup, and allowed Viz to not only close the gap, but overtake Tokyo Pop. But for Horobuchi himself, it would be his final act as CEO.
And around 2004, I probably lost...
Dang, shout out to Viz.
Interest. I mean, I've been in charge of the company for over 20 some years. I created the foundation of those graphic novels distribution and all that.
Dude, the freaking tilt. I had no idea this thing had a tilt capability. That's crazy.
Biz comics itself, then everything started going.
Learning this today.
Horobuchi would continue his career connecting Japanese and American cultures, building the New People facility in San Francisco, as well as bringing American companies like Blue Bottle Coffee and Dandelion Chocolate to Japan. With Horobuchi gone, Viz hired a new CEO and began looking internally for new management to help fuel this explosive growth.
I was kind of a slacker coming into this job, right? Like I wasn't intending to become a high-tech billionaire or work in a bank or anything. But I think kind of more just a sense of solidarity with my coworkers. I just wanted to help organize things. That was sort of my second career at Viz, was I became sort of the managing editor logistics guy.
The fierce competition between Viz, Tokyo Pop, Dark Horse, and other new publishers who were popping up meant lots of new titles for readers. Viz even finally published Fred Schott's translation of Phoenix that he had done 25 years earlier. And Borders' biggest competitor, Barnes & Noble, began expanding their manga business as well. Suddenly, bookstores had opened up a second front for the comic business in America.
American comics publishers, who I love, started to be kind of not thrilled that there was a lot more manga on the shelves than there was Batman or Spider-Man.
Marvel and DC had missed the bookstore boat, and while they made some attempts to produce books for this new youth-oriented market, they ultimately chose to prioritize the collectors and adult readers in comic shops, effectively handing the next generation of comic fans over to manga, the ramifications of which we still feel today.
From what Kurt did at Borders, really bifurcated the markets into two very separate, very distinct things.
Now, I've made a whole other video about how Scholastic used the opening created by manga to enter the bookstore market, but at this point in the mid-aughts, nothing could come close to manga's sales.
Manga was just selling kind of like hotcakes, and a couple years of real high growth and great times before the troubles set in.
The first person to ring the alarm bell was, of all people, Torrin Smith. In 2004, just as manga was beginning its ascent to the peak, Smith foretold doom. First, he decried the decline in quality of this new wave of manga. He was disappointed to see that this manga boom, in its haste, was leaving sound effects intact, making translations more literal, and often using low-quality scans of artwork. But privately, Smith admitted that he was a dinosaur.
Torrens packaging was over-engineered. Because it was expensive.
Smith had devoted his life to getting
I kind of like how it's kind of like how he's like, this is getting worse, but what do I know? I'm a dinosaur.
American street manga, but now the very things that had made Studio Proteus so special were the things the market no longer wanted. Smith's gravest concern, however, was the
I guess that's universal.
Manga. That these companies, in their haste and exuberance, were flooding the market with product at an unsustainable rate. And Smith was more than just talk. In his anger and frustration, he sold Studio Proteus' library of titles to Dark Horse and quit the manga industry entirely.
You know, Torrin realized what was happening, I think. He was very smart, you know, and he got out at the right time. And
apparently, his Eros work and some savvy investments had made Smith quite wealthy, and he was able to spend the rest of his life pursuing other hobbies like scuba diving before he passed away in 2012 without ever returning to the manga business. But if anyone had heard Smith's warnings in 2004, they certainly weren't listening to him.
During those package media days, if you couldn't sell more and more of one title, you had to release more titles to grow your revenue. Those were the only two ways you could grow your income. So the only way we could grow the business was to put out more titles. So we went from 3 a month to 5 a month to 10 a month to eventually at our peak, we got up to 40 a month.
I think there was probably 1 year in there where we probably must have increased the number of books we were putting out like 8-fold or something.
And the problem was there was a arms race. That was the situation as well. It wasn't just us.
There was that kind of arms race where there was that moment where you're trying to see how many books a year you were going to be putting out.
New competitors came onto the market. ADV, who was a big anime company, started a manga line. Central Park Media, which was an anime company, started a manga line.
It's very easy early days because literally anything we could get, the fans would buy. Everything sold because there was not enough. But as more started coming in, you know, that fandom gets dispersed among all the different titles.
there was a point where I just thought, this is a bubble waiting to burst.
The ones who make it over the long term are judicious about what they publish, how they publish, when they publish, why they publish. But Tokyo Pop thought that there was a limitless demand that would never stop, that if they just kept shoving shit into the marketplace, that the market would go, cool, we'll take it, we want it.
Oversupply was a problem, but it was not an avoidable problem. I look at it, and there were really only two options then. One option was you go through that arms race and you put out the product and you compete and you continue to kind of keep your market share, even if it becomes oversaturation for the market, or you don't. And so that's why it got harder to license titles, is that titles became competitive and were put out to bid. There was just way too much product for the market to handle.
But oversupply was only the first of many challenges the US manga industry was about to face. Now, as is probably apparent, much of the manga industry in America was dependent on Kurt Hassler.
I started doing more than would typically be sort of the buyer's role.
Kurt had a pretty clear idea of what would work in his stores and what we as publishers should be doing.
You know, I started having direct conversations with the publishers who, you know, I would say, look, we can take more.
Being on conference calls with Kurt and the sales team, and Kurt just yelling at us, you know, basically berating us on everything from what titles we were selecting to, you know, I don't know, shipping logistics.
In 2006, industry insiders voted Hassler as the most powerful person in American manga, but Hassler was about to surprise everyone.
There had been a lot of management changes at Borders and Walden. Not all of them kind of came from a book background. Again, not saying they're bad people, but if I had heard one more analogy of books to catch up, I just couldn't.
And so, at the height of his influence, Hassler quit his job at Borders. Borders, the single largest customer for both Viz and Tokyopop, were in the process of collapse, and manga's biggest advocate inside the bookstore world had just left. And still, the worst was yet to come. As manga fandom grew, the internet kept pace.
Piracy started to play a big role.
But 2006 is also when you had the scanlation aggregators really come up in a major way.
I think that scanlations were succeeding because they were way ahead of what the publishers were doing.
Even many of the most popular series in Japan were dozens, if not hundreds, of chapters ahead of the legal US releases, even as the publishers raced to catch up.
The demand was still there. It just shifted to a channel that was away from this market. It was, every book is free. I'm the internet generation. Why would I pay for a book?
The title that really drove that home to us was Gakko and Alice. There's a lot of
the one thing that comes to mind is that Gabe Newell quote that says piracy is a problem with the service. I guess the problem with the service is it not delivering quick enough, and that's why people turn to piracy in this specific case. But it really seems like it's not the fault of the publishers in that case, because they really were just shoveling as much content, like promoting as much content as they can. Like earlier in the video, they said like 40 titles a month, you know, which is crazy. But the internet age was very crazy. Yeah, the internet age, like the early internet age. Well, I wouldn't call it the 2006 the early internet age. Well, early, like, compared to, like, right? But, yeah, when the internet came around and just made everything free, I know that turned a lot of ideals on their heads.
Excitement behind it, and we thought this would be it. We would have a major hit. So we actually paid quite a lot of money to get the title. And I remember the first orders came in, and they were terrible. And we thought, what has happened here? And one of our team members showed us online. Somebody said, look, and I think it was Manga Fox, and they had the number of downloads of each title. The number one title that week was Gakko and Alice, and it had over 1 million downloads.
And things would still get even worse. The US economy collapsed in what became known as the Great Recession. While this hurt all businesses, it had an extra impact on the manga industry.
The side where that came much more suddenly and somewhat unexpectedly was the shopping malls went out of business. And so we're talking about Suncoast Video, Blockbuster, and that's hit the home video side of the business very hard and very fast.
So when mall video stores closed, when Blockbuster went away, the anime market dried up, and that was a huge blow to the manga market. And of course, with malls going away, that meant no more mall bookstores, which had been one of the biggest discovery points for American teens to get into manga. And while all the companies were suffering, there was one company that was going to feel this pain more than all of the others. Let's rewind just a few years, to 2006 or so, to the height of Tokyopop's success, and try to understand what happened.
To be honest, there was a little bit of hubris going on with Tokyopop.
We had the number one market share, and so we were really confident. We felt like we knew what we were doing, and people had to copy us because that's what they were doing as well. And so it did give us a certain amount of arrogance, I would say.
Others might disagree with me, but there was a certain point where I think there was a perception that Tokyopop was the draw more than the titles. That's not sustainable. You know, it's not the brand that goes on the book, it's the book.
That's probably the downside, is when you're the leader and when you're really building something and growing, it can move into hubris. And we had some of that.
That kind of feels like it's easy to say when you're already on top. You know what I mean? Especially in my position. I feel like nobody wants to look at the things that I make because I don't have a title. I don't have a brand to it, you know? I guess there's a balance to it.
Definitely.
In a sense, they were the innovators. They did a lot of stuff that worked really well, and they did some stuff that didn't really work, but they were always trying out new stuff.
I was confident in some ways, but I lacked experience, and so it was hard to make decisions about the areas that the VCs were experts at. They supposedly knew what they were doing, and we were following them. They really pushed us to grow. So we released more titles and more titles. I opened up our European office, and we built up a Germany company, and that was costing us millions of dollars at the time to build that up. And we got into original manga and developing our own. That also cost us millions of dollars at the time.
There was that moment they branded themselves as Tokyopop.com and tried to create an entire social media platform.
We even produced movies, and because I love movies so much, I directed a few.
They even produced a reality show on Hulu, which Levy himself hosted.
Wait,
there was an expectation.
What was it called?
Because I love movies so much, I directed a few.
They even produced a reality.
America's Greatest Otaku. I gotta look that up. That's next. I gotta look that up. My thing on top is gonna be like, okay, America's Greatest Otaku. Oh wow. Okay, we're watching well, I don't know if we can watch an episode of that. It's probably gonna get copyrighted, but whatever. That sounds hilarious.
Show on Hulu, which Levy himself hosted.
That sounds awesome.
There was an expectation that we would grow the business and eventually have an exit. The investors wanted an IPO. In 2004, when the company really was at its peak, I was approached by Paul Levitz, who was running DC Comics at the time. And Paul was very interested in acquiring Tokyopop. We did get an offer. It was really interesting, but the Japanese investor, the VC, wanted more. That was a time when we should have made a deal. That looking back, it was probably one of my biggest, that and Shonen Jump were my two biggest mistakes in business, I'd say. We had missed the opportunity to sell the company at the peak, and so we were just kind of stuck, and then things got really tough.
As Tokyopop grew in every direction, as they raced to produce more manga than everyone else, as they were wrapped up trying to sell the company, the core product was suffering.
Me and my team we were definitely holding the line on the number of releases, but Tokyopop was released. I think at one point they were probably releasing twice the amount of books that we were.
Talking to Tokyopop at the time about, okay, you have to change the way you're printing these books because they're falling apart. People read them once and they have a sheaf of papers lying on the floor. So it was talking about, you got to change the binding. You need to find a better printer.
And Tokyopop's original English manga had turned into a disaster. Their contracts were seen as one-sided and unfair to creators, and it hurt their reputation. Soon, Levy himself became something like public enemy number one for the comic press, with numerous pieces criticizing him and his management style.
People who wrote articles about me had never really met me or knew me. They just didn't put in that time. So they only looked at actions or certain little quips and put together a picture of who they believed I was without ever really getting to know me.
That's how
But the pounding Tokyopop was taking was only about to get worse. As part of the sale process, Kodansha and Random House had explored buying Tokyopop outright. They had ultimately decided not to, but soon Levy and Tokyopop were in for a surprise.
We were publishing, our biggest hits at the time were Chobits and Love Hina. And both titles were ending kind of around the same time. There was a unspoken yet sometimes spoken rule that if you published an author, you as a licensee would have first dibs at that next work. So we just assumed when both of those titles finished that the next works that were going to come out were going to come into Tokyopop. And then we read Random House through Del Rey, their line, is starting a manga division. Both of those titles were announced by Del Rey, and I was shocked. My whole company was shocked. Everybody was just couldn't believe that Kodansha would do that to us.
And just as they were overspending on new ventures, just as they were losing valuable licenses, the oversupply issue was about to catch up with them. Now, it's important here to note the difference between comic shops and bookstores. When a comic shop buys something from a publisher, they own it. But in the bookstore world, if a bookstore decides they no longer want a product, they can send it back to the publisher for a full refund.
Typically, a book publisher has 20 to 25% product returns. In the beginning, when manga was very small, it was like 10 to 15%. And then as the glut began and there was too much product, it went to
from the chat.
30%.
What's going on?
A lot of books came back.
Now, imagine what happens when you spent the past few years trying to own the market by flooding it with as much material as possible, and it begins to contract.
The very, very first sign that we're in trouble was Barnes & Noble, Borders, returning like 80% of the product they had ordered.
Tokyopop was being shipped back thousands and thousands of units that they not only had to pay for, but also had to pay shipping on.
It happened very fast and it accelerated to the point where our capital went away. I think our biggest mistake, my biggest mistake as the CEO, was not raising capital when I had the chance.
No investor wants to invest in a failing business, and no acquirer wants to buy them. It was too late.
We were already really challenged. We weren't growing anymore. We were having the...
Why would my phone auto-complete to my nanny instead of my man? I don't know. I don't know. I thought that was like a funny thing. I thought that was like a localization. I don't know. A local thing. Well, whatever. What's going on?
Returns go up. Our costs were getting higher. So we were really being beaten up all around. And then Borders went out of business. I mean, the Borders...
I'm trying to... do the thing. Do my usual thing. Draw. Work out the comic. While doing something new. Something different.
It took the whole industry by surprise, really.
The publishing side was less of a cliff because we had seen things coming because Borders had been having issues for years. So by the time that actually happened, which was the real main final domino, we were kind of ready for it.
And when that happened, they owed us $1 million that they immediately said they're not going to pay. They had a bunch of our books sitting in their warehouse that they weren't going to send back anymore.
With the Borders bankruptcy, the last of Tokyopop's cash was gone.
And we had owed a lot of money to licensors and other people. And so I had to then go and make a decision and say, we're sort of having to throw in the towel. We had dozens of people, and in one day we had to lay off 2/3 of the staff, and people were crying, and it was just, for sure, it was the worst day of my whole life, and the worst day for a lot of people. And I was just trying to figure out what to do.
What's this documentary about? Oh yeah, this is how manga broke the U.S. comic industry. If I could summarize it really quickly, basically people who never really cared about comics, American comics, discovered manga before they discovered American comics, and they tried to market it to the West as best as they can. And the only times that it really took off, easy, complacency in politicalization. Well, this documentary never touched on that once, honestly. It touched on like more of how would they put this? They put it was most. It had several highs, and all of those highs were basically bubbles of people who just bought books just to resell them. And that really brings me back to when I was selling when I was like backpack vending at a local comic convention. And there was this one guy, he was making comic variation covers. And I was asking him, like, yo, how do you make a living off of this? And he told me that comic books isn't, nobody cares about reading comic books. It's all about collecting and selling and reselling. Like, that's where the money is in the comic book industry. Like, nobody makes money making books. They make money reselling books. So he was basically talking about, and what I was hearing from this documentary, it reminded me of that, of how real that comic book reselling is more profitable than comic book making. The one on the parking. Wait. Wait, what do you mean the one on the parking? So yeah. That's pretty much how it is. Like the very few wins that manga in the West had pretty much were people who just wanted to sell. Yeah, who just wanted to resell stuff. And I think this is like the most recent fail. But yeah, not the most recent, but we got like 10 more minutes. Maybe he's gonna talk about the politics stuff side of everything. Maybe not, but right now a lot of things just rings true from the anecdotal experience that I've heard and what I've listened to. So it's mostly talking about Tokyo Pop versus Viz. That's what this is mostly about so far.
And at some point in early 2011, I realized we can't continue publishing operations at all. We need to let go of the whole staff. That was it. That was the end of the...
Not only that, I just freaking hate how even when it comes to, it doesn't matter what kind of art you make. Most people will make money. The people that makes the most amount of money isn't the people who make it, but the people who just resell it. Or just the people who flip it. Like, the art itself never matters. The whole business of it is just flipping. That sucks. What about Webtoon, though? I think that also... I feel that's a different part of this. It's adjacent, but I think that's different.
The ride at the time. We're going through all of that, and I flew to Japan in March of 2011, and I had meetings with the publishers, and the day after I arrived, the massive tsunami in Japan hit. The fact is, every single morning I would wake up and I would drive to an hour and a half with trucks and spend the day with the different people. You know, we were shoveling mud and doing all these things. And after being there and seeing parents who lost children and families who lost houses.
Yes, I remember Flipnote antennas.
You know, companies
about the hurricane, about the not hurricane, but the flood,
build a company, we can
the tsunami,
get a job, we can do other things, but these people up in Tohoku, what they lost is unbelievable. And seeing their strength and their resilience, it may sound like
that also reminds me of like my brother telling me that there was this telephone in that area that people go to talk with the dead. It's like, I don't think they really believe that they're talking to the dead, but it's just a coping mechanism of if you have a loved one that you didn't get like closure from, you go to that telephone, pick it up, and you talk to them. It's like that was interesting. I remember when my brother told that to my parents were like, my brother was like, oh yeah, I went to the telephone to talk to our grandpa because like my brother wasn't around. because he was talking to my grandpa. Let me just say this, right? And my parents were like, "Yeah, he's not answering that phone." It's like, what are you doing? Going to a telephone trying to talk to him? He's dead. Like he's not answering that phone. They said it in such a matter of fact way. That was like kind of funny to me. Ouija board.
Like a story, but they helped me. The people on the ground helped me more than I helped them in the end by inspiring me and giving me the courage to keep going and to see things with perspective. Certainly, the core of who I am is what it is.
But that was biz, though.
Person with great intentions, but I probably got caught up.
I agree with my parents in saying that.
Greed, but for me, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted the money so I could buy stuff. Money was about keeping score and seeing if
what the heck? How do I get this? How do I draw these legs?
But that philosophy, that spirit, in the end, it's very shallow. You know, it's not really what you're trying to do in the world, and so that I learned about that. I learned about that from having tough times. So after the whole tsunami finished and I was finished with my charity documentary, I visited Germany a few times because the German business was the only business really left. And I could take a small salary so I could somehow still survive.
In just a few years, Tokyo Pop had gone from manga pioneer and industry leader to a one-man German outpost. Had Tokyo Pop sold to DC and Warner, Levy would have been fabulously wealthy, a millionaire many times over. Now, he was considering getting a job as a barista to supplement the meager money Tokyo Pop was making.
Dang, that's really how it be, though.
The aughts manga boom had been driven by Tokyo Pop and Borders.
Hey, Twisted Zeus, what's going on? Yeah, but that really how it be, though. Like, all you have to do, sometimes you just close one door, and then it's like, and then you gotta struggle for a long time. That's how it seems like it be in this world.
In less than a decade, both companies were out of business, but the story of manga in America was still far from over. The years went by. Many people, like Alvin Liu, left the industry entirely. But while some companies were going under, others were just getting started.
I think
there was
this
a lot
looks
of
fun.
movement in the market at the time, and I felt like there was an opportunity out there to do something maybe a little bit different, and that's how Yen came to be.
Hassler realized that while Kodansha, Shogakukan, and Shueisha were well served by the existing companies, there were still many good titles from other publishers in Japan that were being neglected. Of course, not everyone in the industry was supportive of this idea. As one article at the time said, although everyone in the graphic novel business recognizes Hassler's importance, not everyone approved of the way he wielded his power. One industry figure, who wished to remain anonymous, wondered if Hassler would be able to make the transition to publishing, telling ICV2, "We'll see how his skills translate to selling." And the timing was also against Yen Press.
2007, we launched our first books. 2008,
I'm not gonna
global economy crashed. Not to mention the manga bubble crash, which sort of compounded that whole thing. Oh yeah, it couldn't have been worse. It could not have been a worse time.
Still, Yen persisted, taking a somewhat conservative approach.
Quality of the product always came first.
In the next few years, while the manga market shrunk, while Borders and Tokyo Pop faded away, Yen quickly rose and became the second largest publisher behind Viz. And soon, others would be drawn back to the business. After Kodansha split their licenses between Tokyo Pop and Del Rey, both businesses failed and left Kodansha without a dedicated US partner. So they decided to build some of their own businesses in the USA, including a digital business. And they knew just who to hire to run it.
I wasn't sure if I really wanted to get back into manga publishing per se or do exactly what I was doing before, but I didn't miss working with comics, which is still a medium that I still love. So I took them up on it.
Under Liu, this digital business was a success. Soon, they decided to merge his successful digital business with the rest of their US subsidiaries into a single entity, Kodansha USA. Of course, Liu himself was in for a surprise.
I wasn't expecting them to name me as the CEO of that merged entity, but that's what ended up happening.
And Liu wasn't the only one who'd been drawn back to the business.
I thought, I can't sit on the sidelines much longer. Why don't I dip my toes back in the water of publishing in the US? It's just one or two people I hired, young people. And so I restarted publishing, believe it or not. Then COVID hit. And once that happened, it was like, all right, well, I guess there goes that. There goes publishing. There goes reviving Tokyo Pop. Time to throw in the towel.
The manga market had been hobbling along for the better part of a decade since the closure of borders, and now every remaining retail outlet will be closed for the foreseeable future.
This was very
I keep expecting Nujabes to play in the background.
sudden. I was looking at doomsday scenarios, trying to see how long we could hold out based on cash reserves. I was basically preparing for the wars, not knowing what was going to happen month to month.
But surprisingly, the lockdown didn't spell doom for manga at all.
Because people were in lockdown, they're streaming anime 24/7.
And then the most amazing thing happened near the end of 2020 and moving into 2021. Manga started selling.
Once Barnes and Nobles reopened their doors, manga sales went like through the roof.
In 2022, manga sales reached a new high of 20 million books sold.
And if you look at where manga sales were during the pandemic, it blows away what the market high was in 2006. It's not even comparable. It's not even a contest.
You know, last couple of years there've been ups and downs, but Tokyo Pop is doing all kinds of things. We don't have the 60-70% market share in the US publishing market like we did back in the day, and just trying to navigate it and not make mistakes. I mean, there's always mistakes, but not do those big mistakes like back in the day.
The potential audience is still significantly larger. It's obviously grown a lot, particularly than when I started, and beyond, in some sense, beyond my imagination. Something about anime and manga it taps into something universal.
Sitting here in 2025, we're living in a world where manga is mainstream, not just in the US, but around the world. From that very first meeting of a handful of members of the Cartoon Fantasy League to today, when an anime movie can top the US box office, anime and manga have reshaped US pop culture. And of course, this is a credit to the tremendous quality of these comics. But the popularity of manga in the US is also due to decades of work by dedicated fans of this medium who wanted to share their love of manga with everyone. Some of them I got to feature in this video, and many of them I didn't. But as an American who loves manga, who grew up during the manga boom, I am incredibly grateful to all of them.
I just hope that more people would get interested in them, but I didn't see manga as becoming anywhere near the phenomenon that they are today. I never dreamed that it would become as big as it has become.
Thank you so much to Fred, Seiji, Kurt, Alvin, Stu, and Brian, all for taking the time to speak with me. This video was the result of more than 11 hours of interviews with them. So if there's any insight here, it's because of their generosity with their time. I usually like to recommend some comics in these videos, but this one's been all about business. So I'll put some links to my favorite manga down in the description below, in case you're just stopping by and are curious what all the fuss is about. And after the Mobius video got demonetized after I spent 7 months on it, I finally caved and decided to start a Patreon. So if
Oh, yep, that's cool. So, donate to Matt Several T's Patreon. That's cool. All right, next to the. I think it's interesting how they didn't mention the whatchamacallit. The whole politics stuff once. That's a pretty fresh take to it. And I don't have to hear for 110th time.
It's next on Cartoon Network.
Oh, this one's what was it? What's this video called? Shoot. It was like counting down every Cartoon Network cancellation. Maybe I'll look at it. Let me look at the other stuff in my watch later. The first video was not part of my watch later at all. Actually, Wallace would. Let's watch this from Comic Tropes.
And introduced Wood.
Wow, this feels like an old video. How old is this? A year ago, huh? Okay. Got super laggy. Wait, what happened? Why did it get super laggy? I don't know why it would. Our CPU usage is pretty good. But yeah, it's nice to hear something that's not like man, manga is not political and Western comics is political. Therefore, manga is better. You know, it's good to hear something else, something different. Okay, let's see. The Nintendo DS, the world you wish for. Let's try something. Let's try this. Hey, Lamai, what's happening?
JoJo's Bizarre Adventures is considered to be one of the greatest manga and anime series, period, with many believing Part 7 in particular to be a genuine masterpiece. But while JoJo's today is held in such high regard by so many fans as a beautifully vibrant series with an odd but unique approach to storytelling, dialogue, fights, and character designs, it wasn't always such a well-developed package. In fact, out of every anime and manga I have ever personally experienced, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures had, by far, the longest journey to becoming what I would consider to be a truly well-written series.
Okay, usually I'd rather listen to critiques, because when somebody glorifies a series or a piece of art, I can't see it outside of glazing, so it's hard for me to not pay attention. Complacency is the root of most accidents. Yeah, true. Yeah, but what I hear, like glazing or whatever, it's pretty. It's pretty quick for, well, I won't say pretty quick. Actually, no. Look at this. I'll look at this one.
Great shooter. This is John.
As you can tell, I was in the middle of. I pick up some stuff and I drop them off. Let's watch this one.
2005, and then
This one's called How Xbox 360 Games Actually Looked.
Hey guys, in this video I will talk about the Xbox 360 and show a lot of different games running on original hardware. So first, let's start talking about the 7th generation of consoles.
This is the type of stuff that I watch on my free time.
Have a context of what was going on with the Xbox
or while I'm gaming.
The 360 was the first console of the 7th generation to be released. It was released in November 2005, and then 1 year later we had the PS3 and the Nintendo Wii releasing in November 2006. And this is a very interesting generation because we had the 3 consoles selling really well. So the Xbox 360 sold around 84 million units, the PS3 sold around 87 million units, and the Nintendo Wii sold over 100 million units. And we had in this generation Nintendo trying to appeal to more casual audiences. So the
Oh man, when I first hear that, when I hear about the Red Ring of Death, yeah. When I hear about market, the how many units these consoles sell, I think about how the Switch is now the most sold. Now the most sold thing or whatever, and that's mostly because a lot more people are in gaming. So that's the thing that's going through my mind right now.
The Xbox 360 and the PS3, between them, they were in direct competition, and Nintendo was trying to do a different thing. Because the Xbox 360 arrived earlier than the PS3 and the Nintendo Wii, it had a bit of an advantage, so Microsoft had extra time to sell games, to sell consoles, but the initial run of the Xbox 360 was plagued with the Red Ring of Death, a hardware failure that meant that the customer had to return the console to Microsoft, and that cost Microsoft a lot.
I think I had one Red Ring of Death in my life. I think I had one. And I think I got over it. I still have the Xbox 360 from like decades ago. And it's still working. I just haven't jailbroken it yet. I don't think I'll ever find the time to jailbreak it. Cause I want to play Azura's Wrath so bad, but I just don't have the time to play it, I guess. I just haven't really cared that much, even though I know it's a really great game, and I am a fool for having my fingers crossed for Azura's Wrath to come out on PC, and it never will. But that's just the way of the times, I guess. I remember the console wars. It was funny. PC Master Race versus consoles. Now PC is supreme with the exception of the Switch. Yeah.
Reputation, but also financially. The PS3 in this generation also had issues with its first run. So the first model of the PS3 was plagued with the yellow light of death. Both Microsoft and Sony were able to solve the hardware issues with revisions. The Xbox 360 had the original model, and then the 360S, which is the slim version, and then the Xbox 360E, and the PS3 had the fat version, the slim version, and the super slim version. Regarding my console, I have a Halo Reach edition, which looks amazing. It sounds fantastic too when it's turned on and turned off.
Oh, that's cool.
And it also has a controller that matches the layout, the visuals of the hardware, which is amazing. I love it. And regarding the 360, I have a really nice controller collection that you can see a little bit here. One thing that I realized and that encouraged me to record this video is the fact that gameplays on YouTube, they don't reflect the quality of the Xbox 360, because from when we had, videos being released in 2010, 2011, since then, YouTube has improved a lot. The codec is much better on YouTube. Capture cards have improved a lot, so they can record with much better quality. So back then, people were recording videos with a Hopage, maybe a Blackmagic, but for this video, I'm using a NeverMedia GC573 capture.
Or the most classic way of capturing games, known to man, which is just having the camera pointed to the TV. I like that. I remember that. Those days.
Card, which can do 4K, 60 FPS, and that sounds like an overkill, but for YouTube, it isn't. So if you can watch this video in 4K, that will help, so we will get a better codec and a better bitrate, so it will look better, even though the games usually run native 720p or even less. Anyways, I will be showing you a bunch of physical releases, but also some Xbox Live Arcade games. Let's start with Modern Warfare 2, because that's such an amazing and important game for the industry.
Camera onto the tube TV. You can never go wrong. The camera on the tube TV will never fail you. Return to tradition.
Welcome to Pull the Trigger 101. It sold really well, and when it was released, it was a solid game. It had really good single player experience with the levels filled with action and alternating segments that were lots of fun. It had the Spec Ops mode, so you had some missions to accomplish, and it was hard and fun. And one thing that I wanted to record but I couldn't is the online, the main aspect of the game, but Activision doesn't care too much about the servers on the legacy Call of Duty games, so they are plagued with hackers, and I didn't want to risk joining a lobby and getting hacked. So that's a tip for you. Don't log in. If you want to play an old school Call of Duty game, play offline, unfortunately.
I know that it's difficult, that it's well, I've heard that it's still not solved. Activision really doesn't care about their old stuff, unfortunately.
Unless Activision does something about it.
Yet they still charge full price for them, which is crazy.
Anyway, let's move on to Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is a game that a lot of people love. It's a really solid fighting game, super fast-paced.
The battle for survival begins. Engage.
It has a bunch of different characters to choose from, and it just plays really well on the Xbox 360. But the Xbox controller, in my opinion, is not very good for it. So when I played it with my hitbox, then it was much better. Anyways, it's a nice game to showcase.
Oh, okay. Give me a sec. Pausing. I'm pausing this. I think I remember why I haven't finished watching this video. Yeah, he doesn't really say anything, does he?
This game is amazing. It looks awesome. Sketchy rear end. It's really easy to lose the rear.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. He just wants. He's just yapping. I'm not learning anything. He's just yapping. All right, next one. Why did Disney stop making video games based on movies?
Remember that time when every new Disney movie that hit theaters came with its own video game? Tarzan, Chicken Little, The Incredibles, even the Santa Claus got one apparently. Good times, weren't they? So what happened? Why did it stop? And what led Disney Interactive to its inevitable downfall? Hi, I'm Dr. Panda, the only panda that shows up in Kingdom Hearts, and in this video, we're gonna talk about Disney Interactive, Disney's supposed goldmine that one day just stopped being one. Or maybe it never really was? Let's get started. It was 1988, and the video game industry was starting to grow at an exponential rate. Video games were becoming so popular that Disney saw the massive growth happening in the industry and decided they had to get a slice of that pie. So they created Walt Disney Computer Software, their very own in-house gaming unit. The plan was simple. They'd hire third-party development studios to make video games based on their existing franchises, and everyone would get rich. Except there was one problem, which we'll talk about in a minute. Walt Disney Computer Software brought us gems like Matterhorn Screamer, a video game based on the Matterhorn bobsleds attraction at Disneyland where you played as Goofy climbing up the mountain with the goal of collecting flags while avoiding goats and the abominable snowman. Or how about the Roger Rabbit game, the computer version, not to be confused with the console one, which was all about playing mini-games around Toontown. Although Walt Disney Computer Software developed many of its own games, they also occasionally licensed some of their films to big studios so they could handle the development. A classic example is Aladdin, developed by Capcom, a platformer that to this day is remembered for its notorious difficulty, and that retold the story of the movie. Then there was The Lion King, also developed by Capcom, also a platformer, also remembered for its difficulty, and also faithfully following the events of the movie. In fact, these two games became so iconic that they were relaunched in 2019 for modern consoles and continue to be replayed to this day. The problem for Walt Disney Computer Software was that pretty much all of their self-published games were complete flops that failed to live up to the Disney name. According to the company's own executives, the two main reasons behind this failure were the...
I had to stop. I was thinking that Disney games are always more interesting to me than their movies. So you would always catch me playing like a Chicken Little game. I like Tigger's game for the N64. I haven't played that one, actually. I like playing the Chicken Little game. I like playing G-Force. I early in the year I was playing the Cars game on the PSP, actually. Yeah. Like Disney Interactive published some pretty good tie-in games. I heard the Wall-E game was pretty nice too. And it's cool that a lot of those games, they just ported them on PC. So the dream is still alive. I mean, you don't own them because it's like Steam, and you don't own PC games anymore unless it's like GOG or something. But at least you can still access them.
poor quality of the games and the studio's inability...
I guess when it comes to like buying games, you're more supporting the creator than owning it. You know what I mean? Like, if you own it, that's a bonus. But the whole point of buying games now is just solely for support. And I feel like that aspect is lost on the conversation when it comes to owning your own games. or just buying digital games now. Because I remember that motto, that motto of if you don't own it, then it's not piracy or something like that, which kind of doesn't make sense. Because to buy something isn't just owning; it's to support monetarily. So there's that.
To grasp the fundamental differences between movies and video games. Either way, this brought about major changes for Disney in the world of video games. In 1994, Disney had learned its lesson with Aladdin, The Lion King, and a bunch of other games they had licensed to other studios, so the company decided to reorganize its video game division, which would now become Disney Interactive. They laid off 20% of their staff and shifted their focus from developing and publishing video games to simply licensing them out to other studios with far more experience. This way, the company no longer had to carry any financial risk since they would get paid for the license regardless of whether the game was a hit or a flop. It was a much safer option, but that safety came at a price. If the game became a success, the company would still only get the licensing fee. In other words, they knew they'd be sacrificing potential returns, and that's going to be crucial later. As part of this process, the company briefly changed its name to Buena Vista Games, and later to Disney Interactive Studios, the name it would keep all the way until its inevitable end. Disney signed contracts with major studios to develop video games based on its IPs, like Activision, which worked on A Bug's Life, a game I remembered with a lot of nostalgia until I replayed it recently, and yeah, it's pretty bad. Disney also worked with none other than Nintendo for the development of games like Alice in Wonderland for the Game Boy Color in 2000, which followed the events of the movie in platformer format and was rated by critics as an above-average game. Also, don't you feel like classic games just had a special kind of charm? Just look at that beauty. Another developer that collaborated with Disney was Ubisoft, which made the dinosaur game, a game where I remember getting stuck around the very first level and never ever managing to get past it. This was followed by...
Yo, speaking of Ubisoft, you guys hear that they're going under? Yo, play the party poppers. Well, they're not going under per se, but they are, there is blood in the water. From what I've heard. So, you might not see Ubisoft in the near future, guys. They probably have to go back to making movie tie-in games for a while, or just die forever.
Deals with Sony for the release on PlayStation of games like Atlantis: The Lost Empire, Monsters Inc., or Treasure Planet. The Japanese company was also involved in the PlayStation version of the iconic 1999 Tarzan game, which featured a terrifying final mission where you fought Clayton, and honestly, it has to be one of the best movie-based games ever made. And speaking of the best movie-based games ever, how could we forget the legendary Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue, where you played as Buzz across different stages like Andy's house, a construction yard, or some flooding alleys, and up until I was making this video, I had no idea the final boss was the Prospector because I never managed to get that far. I was little and skillless, okay? Things were going well for Disney Interactive while they were licensing their franchises left and right with zero financial risk. But like I said before, Disney knew that with this model, they were sacrificing potential returns, and they did not like that. So in 2003, Disney announced a new shift in its video game division, and it was a big one. Disney Interactive was jumping back into the self-publishing business. To do this, they formed a studio called Propaganda Games in Vancouver and acquired another one called Avalanche Software in Salt Lake City. And this last one would later play a big role in the company's downfall. With this new model, or rather, old model that was changed and then brought...
Is that Prophetic or Propaganda Games? That's awesome. Well, that's pretty on the nose. I like it though. I like the name.
Back, Disney published video games like Home on the Range, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge, Treasure Planet, or Chicken Little, a game I personally loved. It was basically a platformer that followed the events of the movie, and man, I'm starting to see a pattern here. Even though Disney was already developing and publishing games, they would still occasionally license some of their franchises to let other studios handle the development. That was the case with Pirates of the Caribbean, or Tarzan Return to the Jungle, a game based on the animated Tarzan series that I didn't even know existed, and that now I really need to play. Apparently, it includes multiple references to the animated series, like the appearance of Pellucidar and even a chase with a giant T-Rex. Where do I sign? And then there's the iconic The Incredibles game, made up of levels where you control different members of the Parr family, using each of their superpowers to overcome obstacles as you progress through the movie's storyline. Like that overwhelming mission where you played as Mr. Incredible inside a burning building rescuing innocent civilians, or the one where you took control of Dash sprinting down the street dodging obstacles to make it to school on time, including the Pizza Planet truck. Oh, and you could also enter cheat codes like Einsteinium, which made every character's head ridiculously huge. During all this time, Disney Interactive was also working alongside Square Enix on the development of the Kingdom Hearts saga, although Disney played more of a creative supervisory role, while Square fully handled the game development. Disney was so pleased with this new foray into video games that they doubled down on production, acquiring more studios in different parts of the world, like British Climax Racing, Chinese developer GameStar, and Texas-based Junction Point Studios. Disney was building an actual video game empire, and they had no plans of stopping anytime soon. The company kept developing and licensing video games based on their new movies, like Meet the Robinsons, where for some
Kingdom Hearts will forever be goated. I had the Incredibles game on GBA. I played one. There were two Incredible games on console, I believe. I played the Wrath of the Mole King or whatever. It was the Wrath of the Mole King, something like that, because it was co-op. I think I played that earlier this year or last year, and it was alright. It was alright. It's too bad that was retconned for The Incredibles 2.
reason, you
not like I've seen The Incredibles 2, you know what I mean?
end up fighting a lava monster.
I don't remember what was the cutoff year that I just stopped watching Disney movies. It had to be around like Dang. It had to be around like 2013. Something like that.
Actually. The first one sticks closer to the original movie. You play as Giselle in New York and can change her dresses or something, while the second focuses more on her life back at her kingdom, where you face ogres and escape dungeons full of trolls. Disney also continued releasing games based on Pixar movies, like Up, and at least 5 Cars games. And there's one of those in particular we're going to be discussing later because it was the last tie-in game ever made for a Disney movie. Anyway, things were going great, but
Welcome
Disney
back.
wanted them to be greater.
Yo, freaking Cars. Yeah, man. A lot of these games are just had soul. They had soul.
So, in 2012, the company made a decision that would change the course of its entire video game.
Okay, maybe I played the little bit of games that did have soul, because I'm not playing every Disney game ever made.
Forever. The creation of Disney Infinity. Disney Infinity was a game developed by Avalanche Software, the subsidiary of Disney Interactive I mentioned earlier, which let players customize a massive world with characters, locations, and elements from different Disney franchises. It was a dream come true for any Disney fan. The problem was that it belonged to the Toys to Life genre. In other words, to add new characters to your universe, you had to buy physical figures for each you wanted. Disney made the decision to enter this market following the success of other games using the same model, like Skylanders or Nintendo's Amiibos, which had achieved major financial success. And things went extremely well for Disney, at least at first. The launch of Disney Infinity was insane, selling over 294,000 units and generating over $500 million in revenue in just its first few weeks, reaching 1 million units sold just a month after release. The initial results were so strong that Disney decided to focus its efforts on this project, gradually leaving behind games based on their movies. And this was a key moment toward the inevitable end of an era that shaped an entire generation's childhood.
Oh, okay, so that's where Soul died. Disney Infinity. That's all I need to know.
The last Disney movie-based game arrived in 2017. It was a racing game called Cars 3 Driven to Win, which completely contradicted everything that happened in the movie. As you may remember, Cars 3 ends with Lightning McQueen realizing he's no longer physically fit to keep racing, so he hands over his spot to his apprentice Cruz Ramirez. All of this after spending 1 hour and 35 minutes learning the important lesson of accepting change and knowing when to let go. Well, Cars 3 Driven to Win kicks off with Lightning McQueen deciding that he will keep racing after all, rendering everything
based. Never give up. Chase after your dreams. Ignore all the naysayers.
From the third movie completely irrelevant. Now, when a studio develops a video game based on a movie, it faces several obstacles that make the process really complicated. First off, time. While a normal video game might take 3 to 5 years to develop, movie-based games have much tighter deadlines, sometimes just 1 year to get everything done. On top of that, the game is usually developed almost in parallel with the movie, which means
honestly, 3 to 5 years to make one movie tie-in, to make one game, I don't know, Chief. You need to go back to those times. Not gonna lie.
the developers don't have all the information about the film's events, and if the movie undergoes significant changes in its story or characters.
So, to be honest, CEO didn't ever give a F about, didn't give a F, but they didn't want to micromanage every single things. Russian, yeah. I think a lot of soul comes into time pressure. You know what I mean? Into the crunch, right? 3 to 5 years to make one game. I think you need to spend 3 to 5 years to make a new IP. You know what I mean? Make a new game, and then spend like I don't know, a year, like 8 months to a year making the sequel to improve upon everything. And if you're trying to make a third game, that's when you get to overhaul everything. You know what I mean? To be like, okay, this is what we learned. This is what we have. This is what we learned. And here's how we're going to overhaul everything in the third game. And then just stop right there. You know what I mean? I think video games should only be in trilogies nowadays. New IP, have an idea of what you wanted to do, improve upon like the first game, and then when you come out with the third game, 6 months to 6 years. Maybe. 6 years probably too. Nah. I think 6 years people don't care anymore. I don't know about that. I think like 3 years. Going off of Mass Effect 3 logic or whatever, because Mass Effect 1 was like 2006 or 7. Mass Effect 2 was like 12. Wait. No. Yeah, it was Mass Effect 1 was 2007. Mass Effect 2 was 2010, which is 3 years. Mass Effect 3 was 2012. And Mass Effect 3 was awful. It was god awful, dog. But there was a lot of mechanical overhauls that happened between 2 and 3. And plus the game just looked increasingly better as time went on. You know what I'm saying? Star Citizen. Yeah, Star Citizen's dead on arrival. Congratulations on being like the most crowdfunded game ever made. And I think that got bought out by like some porn game or whatever. Not bought out, but like that got surpassed by some porn game or something. But congratulations, and that game still hasn't gone out yet. I remember way back when they said that Star Citizen was never coming to console because consoles would never be as powerful enough to run Star Citizen. Now I'm like, that just sounds like you're unoptimized. I remember back then everybody was like, whoa, this is the power of PC gaming. And now in the future, everybody now knows what that means. It just means it's unoptimized. And that's so funny how things just kind of went the way that they go. It just be what it be.
Those changes also have to be reflected in the game, which puts a huge strain on the development team. And what happens if after all this effort to finish the game on such a tight deadline, the movie turns out to be a flop? Well, in that case, the poor performance carries over to the game too, resulting in serious losses for the companies behind its development, in this case, Disney. So why were these games made before but not anymore? The short answer is that video games have evolved dramatically over the past few decades. An Atari game in the 70s could take anywhere from a few weeks to 6 months to develop. But today, players expect higher levels of complexity, better graphics, sound, and controls, making a one-year timeline.
Nah, not anymore. Not anymore, dog. Like, people who actually want that, they kind of they don't exist. They're not really that important. They're literally not important. You know what I mean? No one's gonna play a freaking Disney game, a game that looks like Fortnite. You know what I mean? Because they can't see every single pore and crevice of the character model, or they can't interact with every background image, every prop, like it's a VR game. That's just not what's happening. I don't agree, but hey. I think people just want games to look good and play good and run good. The holy trinity. Look good, play good, and look good and play good and run good.
Line completely unrealistic for a finished product. But it's not just about time. Budgets have suffered drastic changes too. The cost of producing a video game used to be lower, so breaking even was much more achievable back then, making it a significantly less risky investment. But now, the risk is...
I gotta check. Yeah, we gotta check the numbers on that. I don't know. Probably gotta have to check numbers on that. I'm thinking about inflation and all that. Because we're talking about different decades.
Is so high, it might not even be worth it. Disney found the perfect way out in Disney Infinity to completely leave movie-based games behind. Sure, those games had the potential to be financial hits, but they could also become massive failures causing millions in losses, especially since these types of games were never really known for their high quality. There are some gems among the bunch, like The Incredibles, Tarzan, or Toy Story 2, but the vast majority are mediocre at best and gaming disasters at worst. But the story of Disney Interactive doesn't end here, and it doesn't end well. On May 10th, 2016, just 3 years after Disney Infinity had been launched, a post appeared on the Disney Interactive website written by John Blackburn, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Disney Infinity. The post confirmed a rumor that had been circulating online for days. Production of Disney Infinity would be discontinued and no new figures would be manufactured. Although the game's first few weeks had been a success, the novelty factor gradually wore off, and on top of that, the Toys to Life model was becoming outdated and so expensive that fewer and fewer people could keep buying the figures needed to keep the game alive. And this didn't just mark the end of Disney Infinity, it also spelled the end for Avalanche.
Toys to Life was such a weird concept as well, because...
the Disney subsidiary that had developed the game. And that wasn't all. Disney announced that
that was
it
my
would
bad.
once again change...
No. The whole Toys to Life concept is so weird as well, because it costs a lot of money to make a disc and a case and the manual, if it comes with a manual, right? But now they're trying to make all these toys along with the disc and the case and the manual, which I remember listening to a interview about not a producer, but an executive, a music executive, and he said that just producing the discs and the case was so expensive to the point where, like, as soon as streaming went along and they're trying to, like, gain money through eyeballs, it was just a huge weight that was lifted off of their shoulders, and that made it more accessible to more people. So the idea of just adding another cost, plus these are figures too, which is probably more expensive than a disc or a case. So, and also making more and more toys to sell. In a way, it made sense because that would double as a merchandising and like a toy, a video game and a toy. It's just merchandising, but it just cut into like two markets at the same time. It tried to blend markets, but it just probably turned out more expensive than they could actually imagine. And also, I'm so glad I never touched the Toys to Life or Amiibos, because A, my room doesn't need the mess, and B, I could see that business model a mile away. I don't want to keep buying toys just so I can unlock more game. I'd rather just like play the game to unlock the characters instead of doing microtransactions to unlock a different character. But that's me. But these ideas, these games, these Toys to Life was made for like really, really small kids to bother their parents to buy them more toys.
The model of its video game division. It would stop developing and publishing games altogether, and instead, it would only license its franchises to other developers, meaning in-house development studios were no longer necessary. By 2016, after a long history in video games, Disney Interactive Studios no longer had a reason to exist, so the company shut it down. And with it came the end of video games based on Disney's new releases. Except I lied to you earlier. Yes, Cars 3 was technically the last Disney movie-based game ever released, but that happened after Disney Interactive Studios was already dead. The last movie-based game published by Disney Interactive came a few years earlier, in 2012. It was based on a Pixar movie and was called Brave the Video Game. And the thing is, Disney Interactive originally didn't even want to publish this game. You see, the game was developed by Behavior Interactive, and it follows the events of the movie until it doesn't. The storyline of the game matches that of the film, up until Merida's mother's transformation into a bear and her subsequent escape from the castle. And it's right here where the game actually begins. From this point on, the story goes in a completely different direction. Merida encounters the witch who turned her mom into a bear, who explains that there's another evil bear spreading bad energy that is corrupting special waystones across the land and causing evil creatures to appear. So Merida must cleanse the waystones of the bear's...
Okay. That sounds like a plot that was conjured up by ChatGPT. Like, you know what I mean?
Evil corruption, which is the only way to bring her mother back. Originally, this game was supposed to be published by THQ since they had signed a contract to release Pixar games starting in 2004, before Disney acquired Pixar. The contract was set to expire in 2014, but THQ made a huge announcement that shook Disney's plans. They would be exiting the licensed kids game business in January 2012. With their plans ruined, Disney Interactive had to reluctantly take on the game and publish it, but never again. Ever wondered why there were so many mice in 80s animation? The Rescuers, American Tail, The Great Mouse Detective, Mighty Mouse. I decided I had to get to the bottom.
Nah, I don't really care that much. Next. I missed physical. That was, why did Disney stop making video games based on movies? By Dr. Panda. Good job. That was entertaining. Now this one is I miss Shush. This was I miss physical PC games. From Pizza Dad.
Games in thrift stores is dead. From overpriced hardware you have no clue even works, to things that you think are good finds, only surprise motherfucker, that's Grease! Thrift stores used to be a place where you could find lots of great older titles for a universally cheap price. Especially once the current gen consoles came out, you could find anything from the PS2 all the way up to the 360, only that's become a part of the past. That is, except for one very specific niche. Physical PC games. And I'm not just talking about the obligatory copy of The Sims or the absolute abundance of Nancy Drew games. How many cases does she have to fucking solve over the past few years between hunting at Goodwills, other secondhand stores, as well as just shopping on eBay? I've been able to amass a sizable PC collection. Some classics, some surprisingly new stuff, all of which are overlooked. Which is a shame. There's been a pretty big pushback towards streaming services and a full return to physical media recently online, with PC being the only exception. PC gaming has altogether moved on from needing discs whatsoever for a variety of reasons, the biggest of which being...
Nah, I am never gonna get over how I spent like $60, $70 on Cyberpunk 2077, like on a physical box for PC, and when I got it in the mail, I opened it up, I got my stickers. I got a map that I like taped on my wall. I got some postcards, but there was no disc. It was a code. It was a game code. It was a game code for GOG. Granted, it was an FNXO. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was like, thanks for buying the game, XOXO. It was a code. It was like it gave me all of this cool stuff, and then they gave me a code. I don't want a code. I want a disc. I want a physical disc that I can break sometime. It would be cool if I got like a code and a disc, like what Valve did when they had when they ported Portal 2 on the PS2. I don't think a lot of people remember that, because I remember hearing that Valve, when you bought a copy of Portal 2 on the PS3, what I said PS2, right? On the PS3, right? Yeah, if you bought Portal 2 on the PS3, they gave you like a physical CD and a code so you can redeem the game on Steam. That is ridiculous. And it sucks that Valve isn't making games anymore. Like, what the heck? Dude, can you imagine if other publishers did that? If other, I don't want to say developers, but other publishers did that? They'd be like, oh yeah, you own this game on PlayStation? Yeah, you have it on Xbox now. If you it doesn't matter, though. Having principles? Nah. That is so ridiculous. The whole thought of that is just mind-boggling. Because for them, giving people like a code, that's just nothing. That's literally nothing to them. Because when you actually look up how to get like PC Steam codes, they'll just like crap you out a Steam code like it's nothing. You can like print infinite Steam codes if you're a developer on Steam, on Steamworks. So for them to be like, yeah, let's just do that for everybody who buys Portal 2 for the PS3, and that will get them to go on Steam on our platform, that is insane. Man, they like you don't see that no more. You don't see that no more.
The accessibility of storefronts like Steam and GOG, as well as the freedom of piracy, completely removing the need to even have a disk drive in the first place. That is, unless you're a freakish goblin man, much like myself. Yeah, it's especially weird to buy these games, since most of these are obsolete and have absolutely no use case in a modern computer. Which probably made a bunch of people roll their eyes in judgment at how I spend my money, but I never claimed to be a responsible man. While I will talk about some legitimate uses for physical PC games, I'll concede that I did buy some of these simply for collection purposes, like this copy of Crazy Taxi from the Explosive series.
Okay.
I didn't know that was a thing at all.
What?
Crazy Taxi is one of my favorite games that Sega's ever made, and they make Sonic. I already own it on Steam and GameCube as well, so I solely bought this for the dated-ass cover with the background of fire amidst a bunch of techno bullshit. I love it so much. I appreciate how much it takes up like 60% of the cover, only for the actual cover of the game to be incredibly underwhelming. It's not the original Dreamcast and PC cover, no, instead it's this boring logo slapped onto this mustard yellow background that all of the re-releases got. Both the GameCube and PS2 ports, as well as...
You may not like that, but that's peak nostalgia right there.
The current version of the game that you can buy. But yeah, besides that, there's nothing else here. The back looks kind of cool. Listen, man,
not gonna lie, I'm really glad that I've been like re-releasing some of my comic book covers to look like a video game or movie discs, not disc but covers, and just adds a little bit more flair to it. I think it looks cool.
It was like $5. Nor there's this copy of Ubisoft's TMNT, which is a licensed game based on the 2007 movie that I had for the PS2 as a kid, but sold a long time ago. Yet for some reason when I made a video about this game, I completely forgot to use this copy of the game. Fuck my life. Although you could always watch that video. I put a lot of work in. So I own this mostly as a way to relive my childhood if I ever got the gall to install this to my PC, which is surprisingly enough, even though we're talking about games that are 20 plus years old, is an option for some older PC titles, but not for others. And that's the other reason why many of these games are essentially paperweights. The boogeyman that most people try to avoid, including myself, but if you were a PC gamer in the mid-2000s, it was fucking inescapable. If it wasn't Secure ROM, then it was more than likely games for Windows Live. This fucking thing killed so many PC games, man. It was a clunky headache that never worked properly, and yet played a vast majority of PC ports. Even when the functionality was completely removed in 2022, it left most games with it completely unplayable, some of which are still sold on Steam. Can you tell that I'm a little salty about that fact? It's a legitimate reason why I mostly just use the 360 or PS3 to replay games from that era instead of just going through this headache. And if I do play a PC copy, it was more than likely re-released through GOG. So then,
shout out GOG.
Why the fuck do I own these? Especially if I own all of these games in some other format.
Okay, I know I was like shouting out Steam for a while, but it's still GOG. I like it, it's just a whole nother conversation, I guess.
Well, to keep it simple, it's due to the experience of having a physical copy.
Wait, there was a physical time loop? There was a physical time loop thing? That's crazy.
For some people, it's as plain as being able to see the cover art or the spine. But for me, I'm just engrossed by the...
I got Deathloop on Epic Games. I know everybody hates on Epic Games, but free games I got. Free games, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna hate. I'm not gonna hate them.
Entire package. I love when the stickers are still intact, like on my copy of the Halo PC port. In-depth manuals that often have things unique.
Actually, not gonna lie, if it wasn't for Epic Games, I think I'd probably play more free-to-play games. The only thing that's keeping me from playing free-to-play games on Steam is Epic Games.
To the PC release, like this layout of the Xbox 360 controller in this PC release of Halo 2. That's just so weird and so cool at the same time. Or maybe the game comes with an entire CD like Mirror's Edge. Solarfield's compositions from that game are just so damn good, so to get it on CD just by buying the game is a major bonus. Then there's the case of Microsoft's forgotten Xbox One exclusive ReCore, which, despite coming with a pretty awkward cardboard cover, came with an entire poster. Man, I gotta talk about that game at some point. Then there's the Orange Box, which has an orange box. I bought it because it made me think of the Nickelodeon VHSs. Then there's Sunset Overdrive, a game that I love, which comes with a CD, poster, and an alternate cover. All I gotta say is, what the fuck is it, and why isn't this the poster, man?
I love Sunset Overdrive.
Jade Empire, a very underrated Xbox BioWare title, comes with a poster, a manual, and an art book. I found this for $7, but those are older games. What can you find in stores now? Nothing. Not a damn thing at all. Yeah, once the 8th gen was on its way out, physical PC releases like Sunset Overdrive and ReCore became all the more rare, mainly due to the migration to digital storefronts since, to be frank, discs cannot hold that much data. Blu-rays still need massive day one patches, and we're honestly getting to the point where lots of PS5 and Xbox Series titles aren't getting a physical release at all. Do you think Cyberpunk is gonna come out on a singular 4GB DVD? Most of the physical copies that have come out in the past.
Yeah. 4 gigabytes though, I don't know, man. Put it on a Blu-ray or something. Maybe games don't need to be 40 gigabytes. How about that? Has anybody ever thought about that? Maybe games don't need to be more than 8 gigs or 4 gigs.
5 years or so, were often released in European countries and lacked a lot of the bells and whistles. Hell, it's a miracle that Battle for Bikini Bottom even comes with a disc at all. Yeah, this is when the cardboard and paper slip era began. I remember the first time I got one of these was Lara Croft Temple of Osiris for the PS4, and I was so fucking dumbfounded that was even legal. Previously, you'd buy something like Killer is Dead for the install disc, and the Steam key just activated it into your library. Now you buy something like Doom Eternal, only to be greeted by a cardboard disc that's solely there to mock you, nestled in a case that's made of that super thin recyclable plastic, all compounding into this cheap feeling you get for even having it in your possession. That doesn't mean that there wasn't the occasional cool release, like Cyberpunk 2077, which I ended up finding for $30 sealed less than a year after release. I wonder why. It comes with all the same stuff that the console releases come with.
LMAO Deja Vu. Yeah, that's what I got.
With
I guess you're going to experience my unboxing.
Postcards, World Compendium, HBO Max advertisement. But since
okay, I didn't get that.
The actual game is
or
just
did I? Or did I?
the digital code.
I have to probably look through my boxes, my cardboard boxes. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't.
For GOG, it makes up for it with an absolutely massive map of Night City and a physical copy of the soundtrack, something that itself would run about.
They did have that. Yeah, I did burn the music on my PC and on my Vita.
$70 in this economy, all for just $30.
Yep,
but
that was
with
pretty
these
good.
more
And I bought it for like 70, so
bare bone releases.
All that stuff was pretty cool. I forgot about that. They had like 2 CDs of the soundtrack.
More than often.
Okay, I guess I should shut up then. But everything that I bought I bought the box for, literally the game, physically, I didn't buy it. I didn't have it. You know? I'll still stand on that. Kind of wanted the game.
And you're still getting the game for the cheapest price that you can, especially since it's usually just a Steam code. Most shoppers will just write these off as useless, so these are often on clearance at Walmart or GameStop. When these modern physical PC games were being made, it was the quickest way to get big titles on sale, and was more than not often the way I bought them. Fallout 4, Battlefront, Jedi Fallen Order, Cyberpunk, Doom Eternal, Deathloop, even Ghostwire Tokyo has one of these. But in 2025, it's pretty much impossible to even hear of a physical PC game, and that's kind of a shame. Bars. Partly because, yes, these do make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside, but also because there's a lot of care and depth given to games in physical form that's almost non-existent nowadays. When I learned that Halo Infinite would finally be the series' first time to release on Xbox and PC simultaneously, now I was ecstatic, only to be disappointed when I learned that there would be no physical copy at all for Windows. Sure, I can just buy a Halo Infinite poster and statue, or imagine what a manual would look like, but it's not the fucking same, man. There's just no sauce. I get that this is gonna sound very old man yells at clouds and everybody brings this up, but when was the last time a game had a fucking manual? Now more than ever, video games are just treated like files shared over the internet from a billion-dollar company over to my fucking hunk of hardware in my living room, as if they can easily be replaced or forgotten.
Okay, so yeah. Nobody wants a manual right now because the whole purpose of a manual was literally how to play the game, an introduction to the lore, or they would just store, if it was a fighting game, they would store all the combos in there, the special moves and the combos, move sets in there, in the manuals. That was the whole purpose of the manual, right? And now that everything that used to be in a manual is literally in the game, they could absolutely repurpose it and turn the manual into an art book. That's what I would do. If there was a manual, that would be a mini documentary of how we made the game. But I guess that's cost money.
And that's just...
Or, I don't know. Or at least have the CD. Well, of course I'm not going to do this. Because, yeah, it still costs money to manufacture. But at least still have the CD and have the CD be somewhat like a key, you know? Like, I know that, like, you can manually put in the code, but, like, have it, like, hear me out. The CD be a key in of itself, you know? To go on, well, yeah, since we need to be online all the time. I don't know, man. I don't know. Games are too big. We don't need listen, games are too big. Overwatch is 100 gigabytes now. And don't get me started on Fortnite. Who knows how big Fortnite is? What was it Fortnite that's 100 gigabytes? Right. We need to dial it back. The industry needs to dial it back with these ridiculous files, with these ridiculous game file sizes. I think we gotta start with there first, and then maybe we can go back. We can go back to the era of CDs. CDs nuts. I did that for you, F in the chat.
It's not fair. Each individual title used to have presentation and goodies that would elicit this palpable excitement long after the hype had come and gone.
Or make the CD the making of, like, you know, the making of and a code. You know what I mean? Know what I mean?
Even if that disc is useless as shit, or it didn't come with any extras, there's still a physical manifestation of the labors of love done by countless developers, musicians, artists, and voice actors who all did their best to deliver an experience to you. It's sort of fitting that my most recent find that even kickstarted this video in the first place was a PC copy of Call of Duty Black Ops. Now, I'm not a Call of Duty guy at all. I played the first 2 games with my dad on the PS2, mostly because we used to laugh about how the subtitles sounded like you were taking a fat shit, but Black Ops was the first next-gen game I'd ever seen up close with my fucking bug eyes, since my family had a Wii until 2012. But my uncle built his own PC, and allowed me to play a couple hours of Black Ops on it. It was the first PC game I'd ever seen, and looking at this old-ass cover just makes me think of my uncle's gamer den and his fucking castle of Pepsi cans that he used to construct all the time. It makes me think of my grandma, who's not here anymore. It makes me think of the house that we all spent 20 years in as a family that we just can't return to anymore. And those memories don't get to exist if it's just a fucking .exe file sent to me by Mr. Sex Crimes. Memories like mine and yours could probably be forgotten or written off without these hunks of plastic attached to them.
Old covers were the best, for real.
Is it the same excuse that many hoarders give? Yes, but that doesn't make it any less true. Ladies and gentlemen, I love video games, I love collecting shit, and I love my uncle. Thank you.
Word. Word. Shout out to Pizza Dad. Let me just oh yeah, I already liked the video. Why didn't I finish the video? Well, now I finished the video. Shout out. Alright, this was this one piques my interest. Should I live inside a net cafe? By Salaryman Tokyo. Do I have to read? Okay, I have to read. Nah, remove. I don't want to read. Let's see. Okay, we're getting more into the political stuff. Okay, let me just remove that. That was the Disney video. I think I've seen the absolute degeneracy. Wait. The absolute degeneracy of modern writing. That's tempting. How SpongeBob uses comedy to tell a compelling story. All right, let's try that.
Dying for Pi is one of the most character-dense, story-driven, and, most importantly, hilarious 11 minutes of television ever put to screen. How could the SpongeBob writers craft such a brilliantly executed story? If that question interests you, make sure to keep watching as we break down how to write an episode like Dying for Pi. So, Dying for Pi, like all great stories...
Okay, call it. Is this advice gonna be legit, or is it gonna be cap? I don't know. Something about this gives me cap. Gives me cap vibes. Maybe I'll be wrong.
Takes a character on a journey where they have their flaws challenged and their perspectives changed. The protagonist of this episode is Squidward, and the opening of the episode makes one thing very clear. He finds this little yellow guy insufferable. What's his name again? SpongeBob. Right, yes, SpongeBob. The SpongeBob-Squidward dynamic is something regular viewers of the show are quite familiar with. They are characters who are completely opposite in terms of their attitudes towards life, with SpongeBob being overly positive and Squidward being overly negative. Squidward has 3 interactions with SpongeBob in less than the first minute of the episode that...
I think literally everybody knows what SpongeBob and Squidward is. I think people who click on the video knows the dynamic between SpongeBob and Squidward. But I'm just being nitpicky, I guess.
Re-establish this dynamic. The episode opens on Squidward playing piano, only to find SpongeBob ruining his playing with a Krusty Krab dinging bell, showing that Squidward finds SpongeBob so annoying, it haunts his dreams. Then we see Squidward walking in, the shot speaks for itself, and then SpongeBob enthusiastically greets Squidward, to which Squidward doesn't respond. So with these simple moments, we are introduced to the SpongeBob-Squidward relationship, and we are shown that Squidward's main want is to have as little interaction with this yellow cube as possible. These moments also establish Squidward's character flaw. He's too cynical, but the very beginning of the episode with Squidward's piano playing dream...
I don't know, I'm losing, this is losing my interest. I'm not saying that it's not interesting. I feel like it's just recapping the episode. It feels like it's recapping the episode. You know what I mean?
Does give one extra layer to Squidward's character, his artistic side, which does show that somewhere inside Squidward there is a desire for something greater and that he...
Okay, yeah, I'm not watching this. I'm sorry. Did not finish. That's just how it goes with the, That's just how it goes with, the watch laters. But I did watch it later. Okay, what are the rules Michael Jackson followed to create music? Try this one.
And don't write this song. Don't write anything. Let the song create itself. Let the strings tell you what to do, where they should come. Let the piano tell you what chords to hit. Let the fills, let the bass tell you what it should be doing. Everything. Let it create itself. Let it...
LOL music now? Listen, I have... call it. I have internet drama, video game documentaries, Christian documentaries, glazing mangaka, political stuff, Plato, like talking about Plato, financial stuff. I have everything from across the board, dog. It's crazy. I got a little bit of everything. Like, this is why I know a little bit about a lot of things. This is schizo, I guess. I don't know.
Form. Let it do what it wants to do. Don't force upon you.
I'm trying to find my
force upon you. What I meant was,
shoot.
A song creates itself.
Nah, this interests me, but it was like this was random. Hold on, give me a sec. I'm trying to find my stupid camera. I had it around here. Shouldn't be gone too far. I think I know what happened. Zero regard. Personal. Okay, so it's not here. It'd be cooler if I just flip the light. There we go. There we go. Yo, what happened to the camera? Flipping my entire room upside down for it. Oh, there it is. I gotta stop buying things that are just colored black. Because when I lose them, everything just fades into it. Everything just like fades into shadow. No wonder why I couldn't find anything. My room is dark. Almost everything is a mess. Alright, here we go. Alright, let's see if I can... Oh! You see me. That was automatic. Alright, let's go.
I'm just the source through which it comes. It all creates itself. When a song comes to me, I'm hearing the strings, I'm hearing the bass, I'm hearing the drums, I'm hearing everything comes as a package.
Okay, what's up with this music? Like, why is it? Okay, so what's up with this occultic music right now? I feel like that's kind of unnecessary.
It's just like catching a leaf that falls from a tree. It's the most spiritual, beautiful thing that can ever happen. And sometimes I just get on my knees and I pray to God out of thankfulness that it happened, that it came to me. And that's what I'm saying. Let it create itself, because it's trying to create itself. Like I said before, I'm just the source through which they come, and it's a beautiful thing. It's very.
I like this lighting. It displays that it's pretty dark out.
Very spiritual. It's like standing under a tree and letting a leaf fall and trying to catch it. It's that beautiful. And what I do is it comes into my head. I could be walking.
Okay, is somebody gonna talk about something, or is it just him saying? Is just him talking?
Thing that you've been. Girl is mine. Don't build your hopes to be let down.
Okay, so I guess it's just somebody splicing together Michael Jackson interviews.
Comes to me, I'm hearing the strings, I'm hearing the bass, I'm hearing the world.
I don't know, man. I kind of don't. I don't like that. That's annoying. How the pandemic changed the internet forever. Wizard of Wit. Let's try this out.
It's one woman's foul-mouthed meltdown over a request to wear a mask.
Sorry, I just don't like those types of videos. I'm pretty sure it's high effort to find those clips, but it's not really good for me to like have on in the background or learn anything that much. You know what I mean? Because when you're not really paying attention, it just sounds like Michael is just saying stuff. You know what I mean?
Let's press the reverse button to 2019. There are reports of an illness in central China that starts off with a loss of taste and smell, followed by intense dry coughing, shortness of breath, and then a fever. In the West, many pass this off as just another endemic in a far-off land such as the 2013 outbreak of Ebola. I will admit that I was one of those people at the time who shrugged it off. And in hindsight, I like to tell myself in 2019,
uh-oh, retard alert! Retard alert, class!
According to most
remember Ebola?
Experts, COVID-19 came about from zoonosis, meaning that its origins come from another animal. Get it? Zoo equal animal, gnosis equal disease. Gotta love how the Greek language finds its way into the English language for almost any word that sounds fancy. The most common sub-explanation of this explanation is that the virus came from a wet market in Wuhan, China. This involved bats, which are flying virus factories, also responsible for Ebola, MERS, and a host of other ailments. Some made a more controversial claim that the virus was passed on from a bat to a pangolin. A pangolin is basically an old world armadillo with scales that inspired the Pokemon Sandslash. Was that last piece of information necessary? Absolutely not. I just wanted to mention it anyway.
Pokemon.
Pangolins are
I
one of the most
understand.
widely trafficked animals, due to them being
Pokemon. I understand now. Yay. How could you put Pokemon into the sentence? Thank you.
the only mammal with scales. They're oftentimes used in traditional Chinese medicine as a form of Viagra, even though there's no scientific evidence for this. If the pangolin theory behind COVID is true, then the biggest pandemic in living memory happened because some guys in China couldn't get hard. And
real.
And of course, there was the lab leak theory, which claims that the virus was the product of human scientific endeavors rather than nature. At first, the theory was popular on the internet but dismissed by mainstream media and much of the scientific community as a supposed crank theory. Around half a year later, the theory gained more traction in mainstream media circles, but it is still a minority opinion among experts. The entire ordeal led to increased skepticism of mainstream institutions, mostly spread on social media. I personally have no stance since I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm just a guy on the internet talking about the history of online social movements. And oh boy, did the COVID pandemic spur internet discussions. Although calling them discussions might be giving them too much credit. By the time the virus had ravaged through China and then clobbered Italy, it became clear that COVID was not an epidemic in a far-off land. It wasn't something that just happened a long ways away in a place where people think the scales of armadillo things are treatments for ED, or that bat wings can be replacements for beef stock. This was a virus here at home. And this virus, and the discourse around it, would dominate all our lives for the next 2 years. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was a brief spat of optimism, as many thought the event would put an end to the bitter culture wars of the mid to late 2010s. "We're all in this together" was the slogan.
The culture war. Remember the culture war? I remember the culture war. Remember the culture war? Man, that was history, huh? Yep. Ancient history.
People thought that people would come together in unison to fight a common enemy. Who cares about black, white, American, Indian, Spanish, Chinese, male, female, gay, straight, cis, trans, young, old, when there are strands of RNA wrapped in protein that are coming to kill us all? As Spain and Italy were engulfed with the virus, public health officials across the globe, including the World Health Organization, told everybody to stay at home and engage in what is called social distancing. As much pain and suffering as the virus caused, it was a godsend for neckbeards, Discord mods, and Twitter activists everywhere, as now everyone was forced to act like them, a bunch of terminally online antisocial troglodytes. Most office jobs.
How many people died during the culture war? I mean, not during, but because of the culture war. Were there? What's the body count of the culture war? The Great Culture War. Is there a Wikipedia article about that? For real. Here was crazy.
Switched to working online from home instead of the office. No longer would white-collar workers have to engage in small talk at the water cooler. Instead, they engaged in small talk on Zoom and Microsoft Teams. This transition allowed some people to escape the grueling commute times and use that spare time for more productive activities like arguing with people on Facebook about the origins of the virus that led to this conundrum.
Actually, Charlie Kirk is probably easily put one down for the body count of the culture war. That's easily one. That's easily one. Anybody else is a mystery to me.
Social distancing also changed our consumption habits, as people spent more of their disposable income on goods rather than services, since services require coming into contact with people. The consumption of goods also changed, as brick and mortar stores were closed, while online retail, namely Amazon, boomed. Jeff Bezos made tons of money while his workers were angry, and they had been subjected to health hazards at these warehouses. This led to the viral video titled, quote, "Dildos are not an essential item." To be fair to the people who were purchasing these items, with the lack of social contact, including dating, perhaps more people needed some DIY stress relief during the COVID pandemic. The decrease in service sector jobs, particularly in restaurants and bars, led to large-scale unemployment during this period. Some people lost their livelihoods to the point that they ended up in tents, and these were probably the only people who weren't terminally online during the time. Humans are social animals, and the only thing worse than being surrounded by people is being surrounded by no one. Now don't get me wrong, people suck, but some of the worst company you can have is on your own with your own mind. Being
also
alone
true.
leads to higher rates of depression, anxiety, and even cardiovascular disease, which is just fantastic when there's a virus spreading which targets your cardiovascular system. Now, while the virus was clearly most deadly towards older people for obvious reasons, Zoomers were not unscathed. Zoomers were already one of the most socially maladjusted, isolated, and terminally online generations we've ever seen. Who needs to go outside when you have Minecraft? Who needs to make friends when you have Instagram followers? And who needs to do boring, lame stuff like having a relationship and having sex when there's...
Nobody makes friends on Instagram. Absolutely nobody. Nobody makes friends on Instagram. That's a lie. Making friends on Minecraft, maybe. Yeah, I can see that. Instagram, no, never. Not in a million years.
X videos a click away. Many people took the social lockdowns as a blessing in disguise. With more free time and isolation, many could learn a new language or a new musical instrument, try out forging or underwater.
Dude, I tried learning Japanese during that time. I dropped it so quickly. I was on it for a while, but I dropped it. Pause. But it's just not... I don't know. I'm like, why would I... In the middle of like learning it, I was like, why would I do this? Why should I learn this language?
Or basket weaving. But for many a Zoomer,
like everybody speaks English anyway.
That would be just too constructive and productive. Why waste your time accomplishing something of value when you can spend your time trying to destroy the reputation of someone who has accomplished more than you? Through increased digitalization, the pandemic ended up indirectly exacerbating many of the pre-existing mental health issues Zoomers were dealing with. And keep in mind that this is a generation that uses therapy words like trauma, gaslighting, and other terms that have just become part of the internet's common English vernacular. Now, as easy as it is to forget, some people did actually go outside and get vitamin D, and maybe even touch foliage during the pandemic. You'd think this would assuage the problems related to isolation, but in many ways it exacerbated them. One of the biggest culture war issues of the time, online and offline, was face cloth. Just look how sinister this looks. I'm obviously talking about face masks. In the wealthy, digitalized, conformist countries of East Asia, it is customary to wear masks when you are sick, especially when there's an outbreak. However, in the more individualistic Western world, this became a more divisive issue, resulting in internet flame wars and IRL Karen-tier meltdowns. Public health officials didn't help the situation when they recommended not using masks at the beginning of the pandemic due to fears of supply shortages, only to change their minds later on. On top of that,
How it
many
goes.
tapeworms in the form of humans used e-commerce to purchase masks in mass and then sell them at an upcharge. Confusion caused backlash, in which the masks were compared to dog muzzles, face diapers, and even Zyklon B chambers. In reality, the N95 respirator is actually a highly effective tool for preventing respiratory infections. However, cloth masks, while being better than nothing, are not super effective. And yeah, they kind of do look like a facial diaper. Granted, none of this mattered to Facebook uncles whose scientific literacy is on par with that of an African tribesman who dictates the height of which witches can fly at. Many had viewed science as one of the last few institutions that could withstand the decline in public trust. After all, being anti-science is the equivalent of saying, "me no like fact." The scientific establishment, and in some instances the scientific method, was now being viewed with more and more suspicion, particularly by people on the right, but this time for secular rather than religious reasons. Science is still an institution, and institutions are composed of people. And remember that the people are retarded. One of the more nuanced debates was over lockdowns.
Yeah. Things wouldn't be so bad if the government actually cared about its people and doesn't lie all the time. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure if everybody knew the inner workings of like the government or what it takes to run a government, I'm pretty sure everybody would be anti-government. To the point where there would be nobody that would... Everybody would like want to like burn everything down. And burning everything down just isn't constructive. You know what I mean? So, what a weird predicament that we find ourselves in, ain't it?
This was a debate based on protecting people's livelihoods versus protecting people's lives. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was widespread support for the lockdowns, as we were only expecting it to last a few weeks, or at most, a month or two. As time went on, this led to mass outrage, as stores closed and there was mass unemployment. And you know what unemployed people have the time to do? Be bitter online.
True.
Despite all the emphasis on staying at home, there was one area in which much of the medical and cultural establishments made an exception for: protests that were in line with their political beliefs. When the BLM protests erupted after the death of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer, many of the organizations which told people to stay indoors and scroll through YouTube recommendations were now promoting protesting, calling racism a disease like COVID. The politicization of healthcare and the online discourse around it contributed to growing skepticism of the medical establishment. And skepticism of medicine is not particularly good when you have a microscopic mutating demon spreading from coof to coof. As strange as it sounds, during the 2000s, anti-vaccine BS was the cause of Hollywood liberals, not mouth-breathing rednecks and trailer park Karens. When the first COVID vaccines were available to the public, those who wanted the vaccines got inoculated in mass. Later on, more skeptical people hopped on board, while others, like Joe Rogan, refused to use livestock deworming medication. Joe Rogan was at this point one of the biggest celebrities on the internet at the time, if not the biggest. The perception around him across the board at the beginning was very, very positive. But as the pandemic moved on, he seemed to slowly morph into a quasi-right-of-center culture war figure due to his comments about the vaccine. Some of this was due to faction.
Pause. I know we have like 4 minutes left, but I am so bored of this video. It's like, this isn't news to me. It's just very over. I thought it would be more interesting than this, not gonna lie. I thought it was gonna... It doesn't really tell you how the internet... it ruined the internet. It just said... He just goes down... He just breaks down what just happened. Without the need of the internet. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's not interesting. Let's see. What's next? Valkyria Chronicles. I know not everybody cares about that. Summon Demons. That's kind of the absolute degeneracy of modern writing. Let's check this out.
When I started this channel, it was largely because I had been noticing a broad decline in storytelling in general and literature in particular, a decline that began a lot longer ago than most people think. And my aim has always been to help, insofar as I am able, to remind writers of the true fundamentals of storytelling, and to hopefully elevate their craft into something that isn't beholden to current market trends nor controlled by the fleeting tastes of book talk or bookstagram or whatever. However, I've been noticing that there are a lot more aspects that have been contributing to the decline of literature besides just a lack of understanding regarding the fundamentals. Today, I would like to focus on one of the most glaring issues plaguing modern publishing.
Degeneracy. Banned books. We gotta ban books, guys.
Something you hear a lot is that women have come to dominate the literary world more and more. We'll look closer at those numbers later, but for now I think we can all agree that female writers have achieved fame and success comparable to a lot of their male predecessors and contemporaries. But the female writing, which is most often presented as proof of this, is things like this, despite the fact that there have always existed things like this. I'm personally of the opinion that the literary world is so rife with corruption and ideologies that any observation along these lines is meaningless. Generally, across the board, it isn't really men or women who dominate the literary world, it's ideologies and popular trends in social politics, whatever those might be at a given time. Historically, a lot, not all, but a lot of the most widely celebrated female writers, especially within the 20th and 21st centuries, have been at the bleeding edge of social and political progressivism. To my mind, this makes it less about being a woman and more about being an acolyte of a particular ideology. Like I said though, not always, just most of the time. Nevertheless, it is somewhat true that right now women somewhat dominate the publishing industry. First of all, some housekeeping. Apparently, I will be punished in some mysterious way if I use a certain word in my videos. This word has 4 letters, starts with a P, ends with an N, and there's also an O and an R in there too. So for the course of this video, I'll have to refer to it differently. I'm going to use adult entertainment or adult videos or explicit videos, I don't know. None of these words quite have the same meaning, but you and I both know what we're talking about here, so let's just make do. Alright, to start with, let's just push aside any conversation about taste. This is not going to be a video about what I like or don't like to read. What I am offering you in this video is not my opinion or my reading preference, it is facts. And the first thing we need to establish is that all this so-called romance fiction and most, if not all, of the current women's literature out there is not women's literature. It's... As a woman, the most common defense I hear for romance fiction, especially the romance fiction that is so prevalent today, is that it is literature for women. Whenever anyone tries to express some concern about these genres or the nature of their content, that person is immediately condemned for being anti-woman or anti-women's literature. The idea being that these types of books are not just popular among women, but that they define womanhood, and to be opposed to them in any way is to be opposed to women. Women such as myself who are critical of these books are...
I want to see who's making those accusations. I wonder if we're gonna see if we would see any patterns amongst those accusations. I don't know.
Are often said to be suffering from internalized misogyny. The reality about all this is that it isn't a question of woman versus anti-woman or even woman versus man. The issue here is probably one of the oldest ones in existence. It's the normalization of explicit adult entertainment. Whether it's women or men who are trying to do that is pretty irrelevant, because the number one reason anyone has ever tried to normalize this kind of, explicit content is money. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. First of all, we need to establish this fact very, very clearly. Women's literature is not, just some randomly horny trend in the book industry. In that sense, outside of a handful of odd entries here and there, women's literature doesn't exist. Women haven't taken over the literary world. A four-letter word starting with P has taken over the literary world. Barnes & Noble and every other major and independent bookseller, especially all those new romance bookshops, have now just become another kind of adult entertainment store.
So I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know if I should keep watching this. That's a weird. That's a weird thing to say, I guess. It's not women. It's not women that's the problem. The it's the corn that's the problem. But as soon as women dominated, we started getting a corn problem. Like what it, and it's really easy to hand wave it and say like, "Oh man, sex sells though." I'm like when men dominated the industry. When men dominated the industry, did we really have that problem? You know what I mean? I mean, I don't read, so I don't read. I like the prepositions, the arguments that's been brought to my attention. It sounds weird to me. It's saying no. I do appreciate the perspective of saying no. The obvious answer is not the answer, because there are such things as wrong answers and red herrings. So all right. Chat, should we hear her out? I don't know. Kind of don't know.
And no, that's not a good thing. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This is not XXX adult entertainment. This is. You are actually incorrect. For a man, average man, I don't know, reading an explicit depiction of a sex act might not really get the job done. Men typically tend to gravitate towards seeing the act on the screen in one form or another. Women have always, on average, preferred to read it, even if some do end up hooked on the filmed version. The female mind has pretty much the same reaction, generally speaking, to the written version. In fact, written erotic content tends to have even more of an impact on the minds of women than filmed erotic content. Why? Because men and women engage with media in fundamentally different ways. When it comes to adult entertainment, your simple, straightforward two people banging video isn't really going to do much of anything for a woman, generally speaking. There have been numerous studies done regarding female sexuality or the differences between male and female arousal, and generally across the board, they'll tell you that women require what is sometimes called mental mapping to be sexually aroused.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this. The idea of that.
That is, there needs to be more story and more opportunity for her to feel empathy. That's just how it is for women. Empathy is a huge factor for women in all.
I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. Maybe my brain is too small. But then again, there's literally nothing I can do to solve this issue. Therefore, therefore I'm out of the conversation. Anyway, governments create more problems than they solve. Let's see what Professor Zhang clips.
So this is a book by James Scott. It's an excellent book, by the way, called Seeing Like a State. And he's trying to explain to us how bureaucracies work, how governments function. And for him, governments actually create more problems than they solve. Why? Well, he lists 4 reasons. The first is that all they care about is the administrative ordering of nature and society.
Man, I thought Lemay would show up and say something about it, but I guess Lemay's not around. That's such a shame. Such a shame.
So another way of saying this is a bureaucracy is a machine. It's a hierarchy. It's static. It's mechanical. But society is like a forest. It's diverse. It's an ecosystem. It's organic. For a state to exist, it must turn the forest into a machine like itself. So it destroys diversity. It destroys spontaneity. It destroys imagination, okay? All right, so let's use an example of this, all right? So my question to you is like, who are you? Can you tell us who are you? Like who are you as a person? Tell us who you are as a person. Yeah, just use 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourself. Who are you as a person?
Hi, my name is Banker, and I grew up in Beijing, and I came to this school in 2024.
Okay,
and,
let's speed this up
Okay,
a little
wrong,
bit.
wrong. Okay, that's not the correct answer. The correct answer is you're a teenage boy. Okay, that's the correct answer. Right? You believe that you are an individual with individual aspirations, ambitions, with a past, with a history. The state doesn't care. The state needs to classify you in a way that can use you. Okay? You're a teenage boy, which means like 2 years time you can be employed in a factory, or I can send you to war. Okay, that's all I care about. Okay, I don't care about your name. I don't care about who you are. I don't care who your parents are. I don't care about your past. I don't care what you like. All I care about is the fact that you are a teenage boy, and therefore I can exploit you for labor. Okay, that's how states think. Okay, so
I kind of like that example of the kid really wanting to talk about who he is. I think that's way more powerful than if he answered correctly. You know what I'm saying? I like that. Like, I have ambitions. I want to do this. I want to do that. Wrong. You are born to be used and then thrown away.
The bureaucratization of society. Second is the idea of high modernist ideology. So because the state is a monopoly, the bureaucracy is a monopoly, it becomes arrogant, it has hubris, it's overconfident, and it wants to impose its ideology on everyone else. It believes that through its own planning, it can achieve paradise. Okay? So it becomes authoritarian, meaning it refuses to listen to criticism, to feedback, to questions. It is not open to debate. It imposes its will on people, okay? Which creates a weak civil society. And if as an organization, you're not getting feedback, you're not allowing for openness, then you will wither and die. Okay? And that's why states, governments will always fail in the end. Okay, so he uses 2 examples. The first example is what happened in the late 19th century Germany. So in Germany, there's lots of forests. And the state is thinking of ways, how can we best monetize the resource of the forest? Well, there's certain trees that you can cut down for lumber, right? The problem is that in a forest, most space is occupied by useless shrubs or greenery or trees. Okay? So their bright idea is, you know what? Here's a simple solution. We'll burn down the forest and just plant trees that we can harvest for lumber. Right? Brilliant. That's a brilliant use of space. It's more efficient. The problem, though, is that when you do that, the trees are now susceptible to disease, to weather changes. A forest is resilient because it's diverse. Okay? So that's what Scott says. Monocultures are, as a rule, more fragile and hence more vulnerable to the stress of disease and weather than polycultures are. Any unmanaged forest may experience stress from storms, disease, drought, fragile soil, or severe cold. A diverse, complex forest, however, with its many species of trees, its full complement of birds, insects, and mammals is far more resilient, far more able to withstand and recover from such injuries than pure stands. So nature has diversity because it allows for resilience. Okay? Some part of the forest can die, but the rest of the forest will recover from anything, whether it's disease or drought or weather. Okay? And we humans are the same way. If you let humans do what they want, we are resilient. So some communities might die off, but other communities will adapt. The problem with a state, with a government, is that it refuses, it sees diversity as an enemy. Okay, so if there's a natural disaster, it's very likely that a lot more people die off than otherwise. Okay? Another example is forced communism in Tanzania. Okay, so it's a top-down system. And their idea is, okay, these farmers have their little small farms, and they grow their crops. That's not efficient. What if we just got all the farmers together and had coffee? And they all, had coffee or wheat or whatever. And then we can sell this to other countries. Okay? And of course, you can imagine that this will lead to starvation, because it's the same principle as the forest. If there's a weather crisis or if there's a disease, then all your crops die off, and then your people die off. Okay? What these planners carried in their mind's eye was certain aesthetic, what one might call a visual codification of modern rural production and community life. Okay? So the problem with bureaucrats is they have no imagination. Everything to them has to be mapped out. They like things that can be mapped out, that can be a blueprint. Okay? They like to brag about these things because that's how they see the world. But real world, nature requires diversity. It requires organic.
Man, someone's rubbing the mic. Goodness.
All right. So he gives examples of how the state transforms society. So before, what would happen is that people would just come together and they would organize their communities according to their needs. Okay, it's a bottom-up process, but the state wants to create permanent cities where people are just in one place all the time, right? That's why you have cities. Before, what's natural is just for people to live on small farms and share stuff with other people, to trade with each other. The problem with this is the state cannot tax you. So what the state does is it brings you to cities, makes you work in a factory so it can tax you. Okay? The point of giving you a wage is so it can tax you, to exploit you. Property. Before, it was very common for people to share property together. Okay? Now, it's all owned and controlled by the state. Resources are the same thing. Before, people just used resources according to their needs. But now the state wants to centralize these resources. Okay? So it can tax and exploit people properly. Okay? So that's what a state bureaucracy does. So what are the consequences of the over-bureaucratization of society? Well, what's happening in America is that while consumer goods like cars, clothing, and cell phones are going down, what's going up are hospital services, schooling, okay, housing. Why? Because these are monopolies controlled by bureaucrats. Right? So what's happening is with the over-bureaucratization of society, it's almost impossible for middle-class people, ordinary people, to have a good life now. Okay? Here's another really interesting chart. The black shows you the growth in the stock market. Okay? And you think, wow, this is a good thing. Okay? The problem is, first of all, only 10% of people in the United States control most of the stocks, over 90% of the stocks. The other issue is this. The other issue is, if you look at prices, yeah, it's gone up. But if you look at stocks as units of gold, if you use gold to buy stocks, guess what? The price of stocks have gone down. That's a blue. Okay? If you use money to buy stocks, it goes up. But if you use gold to buy stocks, it goes down. What this is telling us, okay, very simple, is we are living in a lie. All this wealth generation, it's all a lie. It's not real. We just think it's real. We're living in a fairyland created by bureaucrats to fool us to believe that we are prosperous. Okay, does that make sense? The amount of gold that you can buy with stocks has gone down. Okay? So the blue is the gold, the black.
WTF? What's going on, F?
Black is money. The money is worthless. Okay? All right. Another problem that bureaucracy has created is people don't want to work anymore. So in America, this is called quiet quitting. In China, it's called tangping or bai lan. Okay? Lying flat, let it rot. People don't want to work anymore. Why? Because
oh yeah, you probably stepped out for a sec. And now I'm watching a video called "Governments Create More Problems Than They Solve." Yeah, I told you we're just gonna get crazy. There is no whatchamacallit. This is a variety stream. This is as variety as we get around here. This is as variety as we get.
In a bureaucracy, right? Leaders don't care. The organization doesn't need you. You are alienated. You are told what to do, and you cannot negotiate. You cannot rise within the bureaucracy. You're being asked to work too much. You feel as though you're just a machine. Okay? And so the way you rebel is lying flat. They are quite quitting. Okay? So your over-bureaucratization of society means that people now have become more lazy, more complacent, more indifferent. And what this also means is that democracy is declining because people's voice, people's power is declining, okay? So you can see that people feel as though democracy is in the decline. In fact, experts estimate that democracy, the capacity for people to participate in politics, the capacity for people to influence politics has declined rapidly these past 10 years, okay?
Yeah.
So we are living in a world that is becoming more and more bureaucratic, and it's killing us.
I disconnected for 15 minutes. He disconnected for 15 minutes. And this is what happens. We're talking about literally anything. Okay, so so this one is called "There is a lot of US military propaganda targeting kids." I think I'm interested in this one.
Propaganda. I love a good propaganda. The first video I ever
who was this? Who made this? Mystic Ratman
made was about propaganda. It's been around for a while, and it used to be very tasteful and artistic. Look at this stuff. It's pretty sweet, right? Well, propaganda started out pretty simple. Pamphlets, flyers, posters, all generally straightforward too. There was simplicity to it. It was nice. But unfortunately, time went on and technology improved, and, well, propaganda improved too. Not in the sense of how it looked artistically, but rather how effective and discreet it was. And before we knew it, we had US military propaganda targeting children. Well, actually,
Radical.
let's back up there for a second, shall we? This isn't anything new, so to say. The US military actually had quite the resume of propagandizing its youth. But the definition of child gets more murky the further back we go. Let's jump way.
Wait, you said mentally, because I was watching, but I did not retain. Yeah. Oh, okay. So in the last video, he was talking about how the government basically only sees you as a resource to throw into the machine, and as soon as you don't follow into that machine, you're not really useful to them. And he also talked a little bit about diversity. He talked a little bit about diversity, how he says like the diversity of a ecosystem is important. But I don't know if I fully get what he's going at with that analogy, and saying that some like diversity in like the ecosystems is akin to diversity in cultures and societies, that some cultures need to like will naturally thrive and some cultures will naturally die off. I'm like, what do you even mean by that? But it was a little bit all over. It was a little bit all over the place. A little bit. Just like this watch later. Just like my watch later.
Far back.
But right now I'm looking at. I mean, I also did watch it on like 1.5 times speed. Like what I will retain will probably be the most interesting to me, because when you read, you don't retain like the majority of the things that you've read. You just get the footnotes version. That's kind of how I treat videos. I kind of get the footnotes version of it.
Let's say the 1910s. You're an American boy living in the rural countryside of Virginia. Life is pretty straightforward. Though you are only 16, you live a fairly mature lifestyle. You already finished school 2 years ago.
Kind of be
you
like
work
that.
at the local grocery store. You've heard talks of a war raging in Europe. One day, good old Bobby Smith comes out to the store and says, "Gee, Tommy, I heard the army's going to fight Jerry and help out our European allies. Word is that it's going to be a cakewalk, a simple occupying force. We get to see the world for free and help out while doing it. What do you say? Let's go join the army." The next day, you and Bobby Smith enlist in the army, faking your age, but the army men don't seem to care. You're a strapping young buck. You go through boot camp, meet people from across the country, and before you know it, all your friends are dead in a trench in France. You have trench foot.
Ooh.
Every time you fall asleep, rats try eating your eyes, and you can't hear anything because of the constant shelling, and you're permanently scarred both physically and mentally for the rest of your life.
Oof.
This was the experience of roughly 250,000 American teenagers during the First World War. A few decades later, in World War II, roughly 300,000 American teenage boys under the age of 18 would also serve, some with parental consent. Why did this happen? Or even how did this happen? As I alluded to before, the concept of the teenager still was a newer...
Dude, that reminds me of when I was working at Hickory Farms, like years ago, like probably 2020. There was some recruitment officers that just walked up to a neighboring kiosk. It was like a Google Fiber kiosk, and they asked them if they wanted to be part of the Navy or whatever, or if they wanted to be recruited. And they said no, they just moved on. And then when they got to me, they said like, "Yo, what's your plans?" I'm like, "Well, I got this comic thing going on or whatever." And he's like, "What's your plans?" I'm like, "I don't know." I was like, "I don't know. I'm just chilling." And he said, "Why don't you join the Navy? Why don't you join the military?" And I was like, "No, I got plans. I don't have plans for that." I just said, no, thank you. I don't want to join the Navy." And he says, "Why not?" And I was like, "I just don't want to join the Navy. I don't want to die for Israel. I'm sorry." But this was during Russia and Ukraine. But I was like, I don't want to go to war. I don't want to help the American Navy government. I don't want to fuel this war machine grow. I remember he just wanted to like drill me on like, hey, you should join the military, and I'm like, no, I will never join the military.
Or social construct in many
They're
ways.
so pushy with that. One of these days, I will learn how to tell stories more concisely. One of these days.
Children of the early 1900s very much acted like adults. They dressed like adults. They smoked like adults. They worked in factories and mines and stores like adults.
That is crazy.
They, of course, had limitations and some protections, but as you know, they were limited. According to author Neil Postman in his book The Disappearance of Childhood, the social role of the teenager wasn't largely recognized until the mid-1940s.
The children yearned for the mines.
Widespread institutionalization of a prolonged education coupled with divisions in literacy capabilities between older and younger Americans gave rise to the idea of the teenager still falling closer to childhood rather than adulthood. So by the social standards and expectations of the time, the US military wasn't technically propagandizing children of the era, but rather, as Postman called them, smaller, imperfect forms of adults. But let's be real here, they were still kids. For a while, the propagandization of Americans would stop to a degree, officially, with the passing of the 1948 Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. This made it illegal for the government to expose the domestic population to taxpayer-funded propaganda that was targeted at foreign audiences. But, as I said, it was...
What does that even mean? What does that even mean? I got recruitment ads in my school email. It might work for the feds as a civil servant. I might work for the feds as a civil servant. Okay. What's a civil servant? Oh yeah, I remember I got recruitment ads in my email so many times. I remember that I had a friend in high school who gave like the recruitment officers his personal email, and then he never saw the end of throughout the entirety of high school. He never saw the end of recruitment emails. I knew I was so quick on the uptake. I gave them my school email so they would never bother me personally. I barely pay attention to my school email, right? So when I gave him my school email, it was just part of the trash. But poor guy, he got bothered by the military day in and day out.
Was only limited to a degree. America, and by extension the Western world, had found themselves in a new conflict after World War II. One that wasn't a raging war, but decades worth of subversion. The Cold War. Though there weren't any bullets fired between America and the then Soviet Union, the prowess and power of each military was apparent in the ever-looming constant threat of nuclear obliteration and the return of an all-out war. And the US government was damn aware of this too, and made sure to make the entire population know it as well. A book titled Propaganda, The Formation of Men's Attitudes by, probably going to say his name wrong, but Jacques Ellul, lays out in easy-to-understand terms how propaganda works. Propaganda is a lot more than just posters or speeches. It's a complex environment that utilizes media, education, entertainment, and even consumer products in order to shape how people think and act. While there is the easy-to-identify overt political propaganda spouted directly from the party, this form is generally less effective in the free Western world, as most people can see where these messages come from and how they aim to influence them. On the other hand, there is sociological propaganda, which is much more convoluted, expansive, and sinister. It utilizes a society's overall culture to subtly influences people's habits, beliefs, and values without the person being aware of the influence. This is primarily achieved through advertising, media, education, social norms, entertainment, and really, honestly, just about anything. It would be this form that would become the standard mechanism for spreading US military propaganda for children in the post-war era. Speaking on very broad terms, there wasn't much need for the government to propagandize their own citizens so intensely in the decades directly following World War II. The narrative of American supremacy on all fronts was widely upheld by its own population. People believed in the cause, so to say. There wasn't much point in questioning government institutions, especially the military, when seemingly every action and campaign carried out by them was in the name of American virtue. But this isn't to say that children weren't being propagandized even at this point. In order to uphold the narrative of American military virtue, children must be introduced to it from a young age. Even today, World War II is taught in a very good versus evil style of narrative, and there is validity in this, but something that is sure to never be mentioned is the vast amount of war crimes carried out by Americans, particularly on the Western Front against the Japanese.
Yeah.
The use of nuclear weapons.
I mean, there's no, there's no, when you're trying to get people to join the war machine, that doesn't help. It.
Civilian populations in Japan was a war crime. But to phrase it as such would invalidate the narrative of absolute virtue the U.S. military had developed in the wartime and directly post-war. So this is where propaganda steps in. The use of nuclear bomb was taught, and in many cases is still taught, as a case of necessity. It was the only way. This topic has been debated by historians for decades, some following the narrative of necessity while others have disagreed. Regardless, this example can be tied back to the overarching idea of sociological propaganda, and it's subtle. Again, to generalize, the 2 decades immediately following World War II, the uses of sociological propaganda was more subtle overall, as I explained prior.
Okay. I think I've done a pretty good job so far. Man, almost done with these 2 pages, man. Why is it taking so long? I hate how long this is taking, dude. Ugh. But I think we can call it a night so far. How do you guys think about this type of stream? I go through my watch later, give my commentary, and I work on this comic. Not gonna lie, it feels a lot less it was a lot less lonely. NGL. I grew up on a military base. I'm super biased. That's real. It's in your blood. It's all you know. I get it. Like both of my mom and my oldest brother, they are veterans. I just never saw myself as being one, personally. But hey, that's this stream. We can probably pick up on this later, on another day, maybe Tuesday. Maybe Tuesday. Anyway, I'll check y'all later. Peace. Oh, you like it? Yeah, you like. Oh, okay. Oh, you're talking about you like the stream. Okay, cool. I was like, I like it. It was like, oh yeah, I'm glad you like being on the military base. I thought I meant the stream. All right, cool. Everybody take care.